A battlefield stretched beneath a bleak sky, littered with the bodies of more than a dozen fallen fighters. Dust and blood clung to the ground, marking the aftermath of a massacre that had ended long ago. Amid the silence, a lone survivor moved calmly through the field, stepping past the corpses without hesitation. Sama Jian walked forward with steady composure, leaving behind the remnants of 100 wandering souls. His grip tightened around his sword, the pressure in his hand revealing the emotions he refused to show on his face. At the edge of the battlefield stood the final surviving enemy, a man trembling as he struggled to breathe. Sama Jian approached him without urgency, forcing the man's attention onto him. He identified the man as Byung-gak, a name that immediately triggered panic. Byung-gak demanded to know how he was recognized, anger mixing with fear. Sama Jian only observed him quietly before implying that Byung-gak had forgotten him, suggesting that many prisoners had passed through Gumho Fortress over the years. As Sama Jian advanced, he admitted that the long-awaited moment carried a bitter weight. The tension in Byung-gak's mind sharpened into alarm as he realized the attacker had been there before, likely a former prisoner. Desperation rose within him as he searched for an escape. Before any plan could form, Sama Jian vanished from his original position and reappeared instantly in front of him. A single downward strike followed, too fast for any reaction. Byung-gak was struck down and collapsed under the force of the blow. Sama Jian sighed, disappointed that his opponent had attempted to escape during their exchange. He continued forward, stating that the conversation was not yet finished and that the man's punishment had only begun. He then referenced an event from 12 years earlier, prompting confusion and fear in Byung-gak. The mention triggered fragmented memories of the Yunsang escort agency. Recognition slowly surfaced in Byung-gak's mind as he recalled a group of escorts captured during an ambush at Gumho Fortress. Those memories revealed the truth. Sama Jian had been among those prisoners. The past resurfaced with brutal clarity. 12 years earlier, Sama Jian had been bound and dragged into the fortress by Byung-gak's men. He had been forced to witness torture inflicted on his companions. Among the atrocities, a burning iron rod had been pressed into his chest, leaving an unforgettable scar and pain that had nearly broken him. Back in the present, that buried trauma transformed into overwhelming killing intent. Sama Jian gathered his internal energy and struck with explosive force. Byung-gak was overwhelmed, unable to even speak as successive attacks crushed his defenses. With cold precision, Sama Jian severed Byung-gak's limbs, ensuring he could no longer move. The man collapsed in agony, his voice breaking into a desperate roar that echoed across the battlefield. Yet Sama Jian did not stop to savor the result. He pressed further, asking one final question about a name from the past, Sama Jian himself. Byung-gak responded in confusion, failing to understand the question at first. Sama Jian then clarified the truth of 12 years ago. During the ambush of the Yunsang escort mission, Byung-gak's group had sold him into slavery. The realization finally struck Byung-gak. He confirmed the memory with fractured regret, but there was no time for redemption. Sama Jian's sword came down again, and his killing intent surged to its peak. He declared that Byung-gak would carry that truth into the underworld, identifying himself as the escort guard who had been betrayed and sold. He channeled all his remaining power into a final release. The energy within Byung-gak's body ruptured violently, and his body disintegrated under the overwhelming force. Blood scattered across the ground as the last remnants of life faded. Sama Jian stood silently over the ruined corpse, his vengeance complete. After a moment, he sheathed his sword, though his expression remained heavy. The battlefield around him was silent and desolate, stained with the aftermath of retribution. He expressed a quiet resolve that this would be the final time his hands would be stained with blood, and that he would attempt to live a normal life from this point onward. As he prepared to leave, the ruins of a distant stone wall suddenly shattered. A subordinate emerged from the debris, rushing forward across the corpse-filled ground to report that all prisoners had been freed. Sama Jian acknowledged the report and praised the effort, while the subordinate observed the battlefield and commented on the completion of revenge. He questioned what would come next, referencing the enemies who had sold Sama Jian into slavery. The subordinate suggested that the remaining leader could still be hunted down later, and asked whether they would return home. Sama Jian looked up at the sky above the blood-soaked land. After a brief silence, he confirmed that they would finally return home. Under the distant stars that had silently witnessed the path of violence and retribution, the demonic path's first sword marked the end of his bloody journey. Time passed. A bright morning replaced the battlefield's darkness. Sama Jian walked leisurely along a quiet road, his subordinate following behind him. The calm atmosphere contrasted sharply with the violence of the past. Without turning back, Sama Jian questioned whether his companion was certain about continuing to follow him. The subordinate replied that he had nowhere else to go and expressed curiosity about Sama Jian's hometown. Their conversation shifted to the subordinate's past, revealing that he had once trained within the demonic cult and escaped from it. The memory carried both relief and disbelief, as if even he could not fully accept his own survival. Sama Jian reflected briefly on that sentiment, acknowledging that even he struggled to believe the path that had led him here. As he walked forward, his thoughts drifted back to the night he had returned to the headquarters of the demonic cult, his steps steady but his mind unsettled as the story continued toward an uncertain future. His serious expression took on an unusual severity the moment he stepped into the room. The person seated before him was Guan Hyo, the heaven-reaching demonic cult instructor, who regarded the young man with a sharp snort. That single sound made the atmosphere inside the room palpably tense. Sama Jian stepped forward and offered a formal greeting with clasped hands. Guan Hyo's sharp brows immediately tightened as he observed him in silence. Without speaking, he slowly poured tea into a cup, using internal energy to guide its movement with precise control. As he set the cup down, he remarked coldly that he had not expected Sama Jian to come. In response, the cup was sent forward with sudden force. Sama Jian calmly watched its trajectory and caught it without difficulty, then drank the contents without hesitation. After finishing, he quietly refilled Guan Hyo's cup. He then stated that when they first met the cult leader in Black Dragon Valley, a promise had been made granting freedom after 10 years of service to the Divine Demon Clan. Those 10 years had long since passed, and he had also fulfilled the additional condition given to him 3 years earlier. Guan Hyo leaned back, acknowledging the mention of a promise, but his thoughts turned uncertain as he set the cup down with controlled precision. He reflected that although the demonic factions had been unified and the heaven-reaching demonic cult had been restored, matters were still far from ideal, and he appeared inclined to reconsider the agreement. Sensing this shift, Sama Jian asserted that the original condition had not been simple unification, but the elimination of the 10 supremes of the demonic path who had once controlled the factions, all of whom had now been brought to their knees before the cult leader. Guan Hyo acknowledged this truth in silence, and poured himself another drink. As he drank, he recalled the years of training in Black Dragon Valley, remembering how among all the children raised there, Sama Jian had always stood out. Yet he had not been at this level in the past. In terms of raw martial skill, he had once been inferior even to Chiaowu. Everything had changed after his return from the destruction of the Ghost Gate sect. The murderous aura that once surrounded him had vanished completely, replaced by a fundamentally different presence, and his martial arts had advanced beyond imagination. Guan Hyo questioned inwardly what had truly happened to him during that time. At that moment, Sama Jian apologized. Guan Hyo abruptly slammed his empty cup onto the table and dismissed the apology as meaningless. He declared that Sama Jian had worked hard all these years, acknowledging that although his fate had been harsh, his contributions would not be forgotten, and he was permitted to leave. Having achieved what he came for, Sama Jian did not prolong the exchange. He expressed brief gratitude and turned to depart, offering a final remark of farewell. One of Guan Hyo's guards, angered by his demeanor, drew his sword and moved to strike, but Guan Hyo immediately restrained him with a calm command. Sama Jian remained still for a moment, as if assessing whether they would truly attack, before finally stepping out of the room. After he had left, Chiaowu appeared at the doorway and casually offered a light-hearted, irreverent farewell before departing as well. Sama Jian nervously recalled an unpleasant memory. He had completed missions that once seemed impossible and had finally gained his freedom, yet a lingering doubt remained within him. He wondered whether his family would even recognize the man he had become after spending more than a decade bathed in blood. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by Chiaowu's loud voice. Chiaowu pointed ahead and spoke excitedly, asking if that was the guardian deity Sama Jian always mentioned, remarking on its enormous size. Sama Jian's gaze followed his gesture and landed on the massive tree. A rare emotion surfaced on his face as he looked at it. He identified it as the guardian spirit. His steps quickened as he moved toward it, his heartbeat growing louder in his chest. Memories resurfaced of how, every year, his parents and the village elders would come to offer their respects, while he and his siblings would climb the tree and play beneath it. As the familiar rustic scent of wood filled his senses, his voice trembled with emotion as he realized he had truly returned home. Sensing his reaction, Chiaowu spoke cheerfully, remarking that Sama Jian had once been like this, and that he had always imagined him as stone-faced even as a child. However, their moment was interrupted by an unfamiliar voice. A child called out to them, causing both men to turn in confusion and realize that 3 children had appeared behind them without notice. One of the children informed them that outsiders were not allowed to touch the tree. Sama Jian quickly adopted a friendly tone and replied that he was not an outsider, asking if they were from Peach Blossom Village. The child hesitated and asked if he knew their village. Sama Jian smiled faintly while looking at the great tree trunk and confirmed that he did. He explained that this was the guardian spirit of Peach Blossom Village and that he had lived there as a child. The children stared at him in disbelief as he continued, describing the village layout in detail, including a small pond to the north and a thatched roof house slightly to its left, which he identified as his home. When he claimed it as his own, one child shouted in anger that he was lying. The accusation caused Sama Jian to freeze in place. He demanded to know what she meant. The girl insisted that the house belonged to someone named Adu, and claimed that Adu had no father or brother who looked like a mountain bandit. Chiao Wu, clearly displeased, questioned her remark about a bandit. Another child whispered uncertainly that he might be an uncle, but the girl rejected the idea and urged them to leave, insisting that Sama Jian was lying and calling him an ugly man before running off with the others. Chiao Wu became furious and roared at the children, causing them to flee in fear. Meanwhile, Sama Jian processed the unfamiliar name, Adu, in silence, realizing he had never heard it before. As they walked further into the village, Chiao Wu plucked a peach from a tree and tasted it, expressing satisfaction at its sweetness and remarking that it explained the village's name. He called out to Sama Jian, urging him to try one, but Sama Jian declined coldly. The two continued toward the northern side of the village. Soon, they arrived at a thatched roof house beside a small pond. The sight stirred deep emotion within Sama Jian as memories resurfaced. He murmured in quiet disbelief that the house remained exactly as he remembered, even in his dreams. Chiao Wu approached and asked if this was the place. Sama Jian confirmed it with quiet excitement. Just as he was about to step forward, a suspicious voice called out demanding to know who they were. Sama Jian turned and saw an elderly man watching them warily, surrounded by villagers armed with hoes, sickles, and clubs. It became clear that the children had reported them. The old man stepped forward and questioned their presence, stating that the house belonged to Adu and asking what business they had there. Sama Jian grew increasingly confused and denied the claim, insisting that it was the home of the Sama family, which had belonged to his ancestors for generations. The old man asked who he was. At that moment, Sama Jian paused and suddenly recognized him, asking if he was Mr. Zhang from the village chief's household. Zhang was shocked that the stranger knew his name and confirmed it cautiously, asking who he was. Sama Jian stepped forward, grabbed his hand, and his eyes brightened with emotion as he declared that he was Sama Jian, the boy who had once lived in that very house. Zhang was stunned at first, momentarily unable to place the name. Sama Jian, who was that? Then, an old image surfaced in his mind. Sama Jian, could it be that child from back then? Sama Jian could not hide his delight, and confirmed that it was indeed him. Zhang's shock deepened as he muttered in disbelief. To convince him further, Sama Jian gently pushed his hair back, revealing a faint scar on his forehead. He pointed it out, and asked if Zhang remembered it, the scar he had received when Wook struck him with a stone after losing a fight. At that moment, emotion overwhelmed the old man. He recognized it immediately, and confirmed it with a trembling voice. Tears streamed down Zhang's aged face as he rushed forward and embraced him tightly. He demanded to know where the boy had been all these years and why he had only returned now, asking what had happened to him. Sama Jian did not respond with words. He simply accepted the embrace in silence, his expression conveying that the story was too long to explain in a single moment. After the emotional reunion, both of them gradually composed themselves and moved inside the house. That night, inside the home, Zhang poured tea for his guest and spoke gently. He asked about what had happened 12 years ago, recalling how Sama Jian had insisted on joining the escort agency, and then disappeared. Sama Jian lowered his head, quietly blaming himself. He remembered how Zhang had tried repeatedly to stop him, warning him that working as a guard for the Silver Castle agency was dangerous. Zhang, now understanding that Sama Jian must have endured great hardship, spoke with sympathy. He recalled how the boy had been forced to take on the responsibility of the eldest son at a young age, making him stubborn and determined. He had once believed Sama Jian had died, and now asked how he had survived all those years. Sama Jian lowered his gaze, and memories of his past surfaced. For him, those years had been defined entirely by battle. Images of fierce duels flashed through his mind, the decisive confrontation with the first powerhouse of the demonic path, and the final stages of a battle against the heavenly sword demon. The sword demon had already been cornered, yet Sama Jian stood before him, seemingly uninjured. That sight had filled his opponent with both rage and excitement. The sword demon spoke bitterly of how it had been 300 years since the fall of the heavenly demon, and how the demonic path had been shattered. He mocked the so-called divine demon cult that claimed it would reunify the fractured demonic world, yet admitted that the rumors had proven true, that all of the 10 great demonic powers had been defeated by an ordinary-looking force, leaving only him. Sama Jian did not prolong the exchange and stated plainly that the sword demon was the last one. Once he was eliminated, he would finally be free. The sword demon's blood boiled at those words. With a fierce grin, he challenged Sama Jian to try, declaring that if he succeeded, he would become the strongest in the demonic cult, the first sword of the demonic path. Without delay, he unleashed a powerful strike to demonstrate his pride. However, the difference in strength was absolute. Sama Jian countered with a single swing of his sword, releasing a beautiful vortex of energy that sent the sword demon flying. The sword demon struggled to rise, but his strength had completely left him. He could only kneel, defeated. The outcome was undeniable. The pride and glory of his entire life came to an end in that moment. With a final breath, the sword demon admitted he had never expected such overwhelming power before collapsing lifelessly. He became nothing more than another forgotten name in the flow of history. Only then did Sama Jian exhale slowly in relief. Standing beneath the open sky, he looked toward the sun with a faint sense of hope and realized that it was finally over. Returning to the present, Jian found himself at a loss for words. He considered that even if he told the truth, it was unlikely to be believed. With that thought, he gave a vague explanation, stating that he had been sold to a mercenary group and had wandered for years before finally finding a way back. Zhang did not press for further details and instead offered quiet sympathy, acknowledging that he must have endured great hardship. Jian quickly shifted the topic and asked about his family's whereabouts. Zhang hesitated slightly before answering that Jian's siblings had moved to Sohung. Surprised, Jian repeated the name, and Zhang confirmed it, explaining gently that it had been 6 years since the move. After Jian's disappearance, they had tried to endure, but eventually had no choice but to relocate. The next morning, Jian set out once again. He and Qiuwu bid farewell to the village and departed quickly. However, the joy of returning home had already begun to fade, leaving behind a hollow ache within him. Zhang's words from the previous night continued to echo in his mind. His mother had passed away the year before. Jian climbed a quiet hill alone and sat on a large rock. Overwhelmed by emotion, he broke down in tears. He mourned his mother, missed his younger siblings, and blamed himself for everything he believed he had failed to protect. Trembling under the weight of his grief, he questioned how such an unfilial son could ever ask for forgiveness. After some time, he forced himself to regain composure. Later, upon reaching Sohung, he discovered a dilapidated old house. The sight only deepened his sorrow. Qiuwu attempted to lighten the mood by teasing him, questioning whether he was afraid, and remarking that it was unusual to see him like this after having once walked calmly through enemy territory. Jian dismissed the comparison, stating that this situation was different. Qiuwu shrugged and urged him to simply go inside, insisting there was nothing to fear. Jian hesitated, admitting that it was not so simple. He felt he did not have the right to face them after all this time, especially considering how much they must have suffered while living in such conditions. Qiuwu dismissed his concerns, suggesting they could simply buy a new house and encouraging him to act now that he had returned. After a moment of silence, Jian accepted the encouragement. He resolved inwardly that he would never leave his family again. With renewed determination, he stepped forward and raised his hand to knock. He called out, asking if anyone was home, but his movement stopped abruptly. Standing before him was a girl. At the sight of her face, Jian froze in shock. Though she had grown into a young woman, her features still faintly resembled the little girl he once carried on his back. His expression tightened with disbelief as he stepped forward, trying to confirm what he was seeing. He began to ask if she was, but Qiuwu interrupted him suddenly, exclaiming in admiration that she was absolutely gorgeous. Startled, Jian immediately struck Qiuwu as a warning. He then composed himself, softened his tone, and asked the girl if she was Sama Jin. Sama Jin's eyes widened in shock as she asked how he knew her name. Upon hearing her confirmation, Jian was overwhelmed with joy and firmly grasped her hand. He began to speak, saying that she had grown so much and that he was. However, his words suddenly trailed off. Something about Jin's hand felt deeply wrong. Jian stared at her with growing suspicion, and as he continued to examine her condition, his expression shifted to alarm. He sensed an abnormal surge of energy within her body and asked in shock what was going on. Sama Jin panicked and tried to pull her hand away, but her strength slipped out of control. She lost her balance and fell to the ground. Jian immediately reacted in concern, calling out to her in alarm. For the usually composed Jian, the situation left him uncertain and shaken. At that moment, a loud shout rang out from nearby. A young boy charged forward, demanding who they were. Jian and Qiuwu turned toward the voice in unison. Sama Jin, as if seeing salvation, called out desperately, addressing him as her little brother. Still confused, Jian repeated the words. "Little brother?" Before noticing the boy had already launched himself forward. The boy shouted that Jian had dared to touch his sister and threw a powerful punch. Jian easily evaded it with a slight movement and calmly asked if the boy was Ho. The boy roared in anger, confirming it and introducing himself as Guangho of the Concordant Mind Association. Without hesitation, he continued his assault, unleashing a chaotic barrage of punches and kicks while shouting accusations that they were despicable members of the Blood Axe sect. As he dodged effortlessly, Jian thought to himself about the names being thrown around. Concordant Mind Association, Blood Axe sect. He wondered if the boy had become involved with some kind of gang. He observed both Jin and the hot-headed youth and reflected that they once seemed innocent and mischievous, yet had now grown into entirely different people. Realizing none of his attacks were landing and that he was being treated lightly, Guangho became enraged. He shouted that Jian had not only humiliated his sister but was now mocking him as well, declaring that he would take his life. Fortunately, another young man arrived and intervened, stopping Guangho. He sternly reprimanded him, telling him to stop and questioning what he was doing on their mother's death anniversary. Jian observed the scene with a grave expression. Hearing those words, he wondered if the newcomer might be Haiyan. Guangho, still agitated, ignored the warning and told him to move aside. Haiyan, displeased, questioned his actions and reminded him that they did not yet understand the situation. He accused him of acting recklessly and asked if associating with those so-called gangsters had made him lose his judgment. Seeing that both of them were safe and well, Jian could not suppress a faint sense of relief and happiness. He thought to himself that they had all grown up. Guangho stubbornly insisted once again that they were not ruffians. Haiyan, clearly disappointed, warned him not to associate with them in the first place, as if trying to shape something refined out of rough material. To Jian, however, the chaotic scene felt strangely peaceful. He thought that as long as they were safe, nothing else mattered. At that moment, Guangho noticed Jian lowering his guard and seized the opportunity to strike. However, his blade was instantly stopped by Qiuwu's bare hand. With overwhelming strength, Qiuwu crushed it effortlessly as though it were made of soft clay. Guangho's face turned pale as he called him a monster. Qiuwu's competitive spirit flared, and he proudly declared himself the great Jumgang Yacha. Guangho, still furious, shouted that he did not care who they were and accused them of trying to steal from his family, calling them shameless intruders. This time, Qiuwu was truly provoked. He demanded to know what Guangho meant, angrily rejecting the accusation and asking if he looked like a thief. Jian calmly stopped Qiuwu from escalating the fight. He then approached the three siblings and hesitantly tried to introduce himself, but before he could finish, Guangho shouted in alarm, identifying the approaching group as the Blood Axe sect. Jian turned his gaze toward the disturbance with mild irritation. A group of menacing men was swaggering toward them. The leader glanced at his subordinate and asked who the unfamiliar figures were, then, without waiting for an answer, raised his chin and spoke in a condescending tone, demanding who they were and what they were doing there. Without hesitation, the leader stepped forward, grabbed Jian by the collar, and roared for him to answer properly. Another Blood Axe member approached Qiuwu, sizing him up with disdain and asking what such a massive man was doing there. Guangho, witnessing this, burned with rage. He pointed at them and shouted that this was Concordant Mind Association territory and demanded to know why the Blood Axe sect had come. Jian narrowed his eyes as he observed them. So it really is the Blood Axe sect, he thought. At that moment, the group leader smirked and declared arrogantly that they were taking over the area, then specifically addressed Guangho by name. Hearing this, Guangho's expression darkened. Grinding his teeth, He muttered that one troublemaker had not been enough and now they were seeking an all-out fight. He released Jian's shoulder, stepped forward without hesitation, and prepared to confront them directly. The leader walked forward with an arrogant swagger, saying that everything would end peacefully if they cooperated. In that instant, Jian's sword was drawn from its sheath. With a single fluid motion, he struck. The attack was instantaneous and precise, and the Blood Axe leader collapsed, killed in a single blow. For a brief moment, chaos spread among the Blood Axe members. They looked around in shock and suspicion, one of them exclaiming in disbelief, demanding who had done it and how it was possible. Jian used sound transmission to speak to Chiao Wu, instructing him to handle the rest. He signaled him calmly, telling him to eliminate the remaining enemies. Chiao Wu raised an eyebrow, his expression confident and unbothered. He replied that it would be taken care of. Without hesitation, the remaining Blood Axe sect members charged forward with their blades aimed at him. Chiao Wu moved to meet them head-on. With a faint, confident expression, he advanced and unleashed his fists, quickly overwhelming and striking down the attackers one after another. When it was over, Chiao Wu looked at the fallen bodies and sneered in contempt, calling them useless small fry. Then, scratching his head awkwardly, he muttered that he might have been a bit too rough. The three siblings, Jin, Guangho, and Haiyan, stood frozen in place, mouths agape in shock. They struggled to comprehend what had just happened, realizing that an entire group had been wiped out in an instant. Chiao Wu pointed at the defeated enemies at his feet and smirked, asking if they still thought he was on their side. Jian looked flustered, unsure how to respond. He then stepped forward again, trying to calm them. He insisted that they were not thieves and addressed Jin, Guangho, and Haiyan directly, asking if they did not recognize him. As he spoke, he pulled his hair back to reveal the scar once more. Guangho gasped in shock. Staring at it, he asked in disbelief if it was truly him, his older brother. Jian smiled softly and confirmed that he had returned. Haiyan immediately rushed forward and embraced him tightly, burying his face against his shoulder as he broke down in tears. Jian held him and spoke gently, apologizing for being late and asking if he had kept them waiting too long. Guangho was stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief as he asked what had happened and where Jian had been all this time. Jian let out a quiet sigh and replied that he would explain everything later, as it was a long story. From inside the house, smoke rose from the kitchen chimney while Chiao Wu's hearty voice echoed nearby. He spoke cheerfully, saying he liked Guangho's personality and that there were a few people like him among their subordinates, referring to Jian as boss. Guangho frowned and narrowed his eyes in curiosity, asking why Chiao Wu kept calling Jian boss. Chiao Wu crossed his arms and explained that when he was younger, he had once picked fights with Jian and been beaten badly, and that Jian had even saved his life a couple of times afterward. Guangho reacted with excitement, asking if that was really true. Jian immediately used sound transmission to warn Chiao Wu not to speak nonsense. Chiao Wu forced a smile and corrected himself, saying he was only joking and that Jian simply disliked being called brother. Jian then calmly stated the same, deflecting the topic, and asked how they had been living all these years. Haiyan calmly replied while eating that he was working as an escort at the Pearl Sea Escort Agency. Jian's eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he repeated the words, asking if it was an escort agency. Haiyan added that Jian must not have heard about it from Mr. Zhang, and explained that he was currently learning the trade under the general manager with Yuck. Jian frowned and muttered that he had expected their mother would have been against such work. Haiyan nodded and confirmed that she had been even more strongly opposed than expected. Guangho, sitting nearby and chewing his food, remarked bluntly that Jian had disappeared while working as an escort and that he had been wrong to choose that path from the beginning. Haiyan immediately snapped back, his face turning red with anger, calling Guangho a wandering bum and questioning his right to speak. Guangho remained unfazed and replied that at least he earned more than Haiyan. Haiyan's expression darkened further, as he accused Guangho of making money by bullying the weak and said he did not need such money. Unable to hold back his anger any longer, Guangho shouted that they never bullied anyone and that Haiyan was speaking without understanding. At that moment, Samajin slammed a plate onto the table and shouted for them to stop, saying that Jian had only just returned after 12 years and that they were still arguing. Her expression suddenly changed, and she abruptly suffered a nosebleed. Panicked, Samajin tried to pinch her nose shut while trembling. Everyone froze in shock. Jian rushed over immediately, his expression tightening as he examined her condition. He realized something critical, that the yin energy in her body was far too strong. Guangho stood up in alarm and asked how Jian knew that. Jian turned and asked whether they had taken her to a clinic for examination and what the doctors had said. Hyan explained that they had visited the most renowned clinics in the region, but none had been able to determine the cause. Even the most reliable physician had given the same assessment Jian had just made, which was why her hands and feet were constantly cold and her skin remained pale. Jean calmly reassured them, saying that she was fine and that she could still endure it. Without saying anything further, she quietly opened the door and stepped outside, leaving the others in stunned silence. After the door closed, Hyan lowered his head and explained that they had moved to Sohung because the doctor who might be able to help her was there. Guangho added, his voice trembling with emotion, that she could only function normally by taking medicine that supplemented her young energy, otherwise Jean might not have survived until now. A heavy silence followed. Jian remained quiet for a moment, then asked whether there was a cure. Hyan's expression darkened as sadness crept into his face. He explained that a complete cure was difficult, but the symptoms could be managed with treatment. However, the cost was extremely high, and even maintaining the treatment was already a heavy burden. The money he earned was not enough, and without the extra income brought in by his younger brother, they would not have been able to endure. In truth, he added, he did not even have the right to criticize him. Hyan raised a hand to hide the tears forming in his eyes. Guangho was taken aback. Jian placed a hand on Hyan's shoulder in quiet comfort. He told him that he had done nothing wrong, and that no brother could stand by while his sibling went astray. He then admitted that the one who had no right to speak was himself, and he apologized to both of them. In unison, Guangho and Hyan immediately responded, calling him Big Brother. Jian's gaze remained steady and firm. He thanked them and said that they should not worry about money. The next day, they would go and meet that doctor. Hyan stood up and bowed deeply, thanking him and urging him to rest, saying he must be exhausted. Guangho also stood, and together the two of them left. A heavy silence remained between Jian and Qiuwu. Jian poured himself a cup of wine. Beside him, Qiuwu muttered that if he had known, he would have brought some things with him. Jian, not fully hearing him, turned and asked what he meant by brought, questioning if he was referring to bandits. Qiuwu raised his cup thoughtfully, and replied that those bandits had accumulated a large amount of wealth, but Jian had ordered it to be left untouched. Jian took a slow sip of wine and stated that the wealth belonged to the victims, the captured merchants and escorts, and should be returned to their families. He added that he had no desire to touch such money. Qiuwu fell silent, unsure how to respond, and only said that it was Jian's decision. He then mentioned that they still possessed the item obtained from the demonic Buddha temple, which could be sold for a good price. He asked for Jian's opinion on Jin's condition. Jian set his cup down and admitted that he was uncertain, as he was not a physician. Qiuwu asked if he could not make even a rough guess. After a moment of thought, Jian explained that the balance of energy in Jin's body was severely distorted, with yin energy overwhelmingly dominant. Qiuwu frowned and suggested that they could simply supplement her yang energy, adding that with Jian's internal strength, it should not be difficult. Jian shook his head slowly, stating that the situation was not that simple. He had already attempted to transfer yang energy as suggested, but it had no effect, as there was no viable path for energy to enter her body. Alarmed, Qiuwu asked what that meant. Jian's expression grew grave as he concluded that if the condition continued, Jin might not survive. The following day, all of them arrived in front of a renowned clinic. They looked up at the scene together. The place was packed with people, and the noise of families and patients filled the air as attendants called out for order. Jian remarked that the line was extremely long, and that they had arrived late, though they had left early. He had not expected such overwhelming crowds, confirming that it was indeed a famous clinic. Guangho casually smiled and explained that this was the most well-known clinic in the region. He then stepped forward confidently. He approached the group managing the queue and politely greeted them, clasping his hands and thanking them for their hard work. Seeing this, Qiuwu asked who they were. Hyan replied that they were members of the Concordant Mind Association, explaining that they did not only manage this place but also earned money by maintaining order at other business locations as well. Qiuwu scoffed slightly, remarking that they were essentially security guards. He then questioned why Guangho was acting so submissive, especially after his earlier boastful attitude. Qiuwu spoke dismissively, asking what pillar they were referring to and remarking that Guangho was nothing more than an errand boy. He then laughed heartily, adding that everyone had to start somewhere. After completing his negotiations, Guangho quickly returned and called the group over, announcing that arrangements were finished and they could proceed inside. Chiu-Wu smiled with satisfaction and leaned toward Jian, quietly commenting that Guangho was more capable than he appeared. The group moved further into the clinic. The deeper they went, the more crowded it became. Jian observed aloud that not only were there many patients, but there were also a large number of physicians. Hyan, walking beside him, explained that in his experience as an escort, he had never seen a place as large as this, not even in Sohung or surrounding regions. When he first arrived, there had only been one guard and one physician, a man named Sosoma, but due to his abilities, the clinic had expanded rapidly within just a few years. Jian quietly repeated the name. Sosoma. Chiu-Wu confidently added that the physician was certainly not a fraud. Although Jian acknowledged this, he could not suppress his lingering concern. He wondered why such a skilled physician had been unable to diagnose Sama Jin's illness. At that moment, Guangho entered ahead of them and greeted the staff enthusiastically. The physician responded, noting that it was not yet time for a follow-up visit and asking why they had come. Guangho directly stated that they had a matter to discuss and requested an audience. The physician nodded and instructed them to wait inside while he summoned his master. Inside, injured patients were visible throughout the area. As Jean settled into a room, a voice came from outside announcing the physician's arrival. Shortly after, the physician entered with an apologetic expression, saying he had been surprised to learn of their visit. He added that the previous medicine was still effective and had worried her condition might have worsened. After examining Jin's face closely, he concluded with relief that it did not appear to be the case. Guangho quickly clarified that they were not there for a routine visit. He explained that Jian had insisted on meeting the physician, which was why they had come in haste. Jian stepped forward respectfully, clasping his hands and introducing himself as Sama Jian. The physician returned the greeting and introduced himself as Huang Zhong. He added that although he had been treating the patient's family for years, he had only just learned that she had an older brother. Observing him, Jian silently assessed that the physician gave a good impression and appeared genuinely humble. He also noted with mild surprise that the man seemed to be a physician who also practiced martial arts. Chiu-Wu appeared to share the same impression, remarking that the physician was quite impressive. Through sound transmission, Jian quietly confirmed to Chiu-Wu that the man possessed real ability. Jian explained to the physician that he had been away for a long time and had only recently learned of Jin's serious illness. Upon hearing that the physician was directly treating his younger sister, he had come immediately to seek him out. Physician Huang Zhong responded politely, stating that while it was not a complete cure, they were welcome to seek help. He then checked Jin's pulse and conducted a thorough re-examination. The room fell into complete silence as everyone watched intently. After a moment, the physician spoke with a sorrowful expression, admitting that Jin's condition had always troubled him and that he regretted his limitations as a healer. Hyan quickly tried to comfort him, saying he should not blame himself, and that Jin was still alive thanks to his care. Without him, she might not have survived until now. The physician thanked him for his understanding but explained that he could only slow the progression of the illness and prevent the worst outcome. Jian fell into deep thought, repeating the phrase silently in his mind, the worst outcome being Jin's life itself. He then asked whether stronger medicine would improve her condition. The physician explained that the current treatment did have some effect, and that stronger medicine would likely yield better results. He elaborated that they were currently using herbs that strengthened yang energy to counteract Jin's overwhelming yin energy, with fire spirit herb as the main ingredient. A stronger variant could increase effectiveness. However, he added with resignation that the most powerful form, the 1000-year fire spirit herb, was extremely rare and nearly impossible to obtain. He also mentioned Gongqing petroleum as another possibility. Jian asked whether such medicine was available in the clinic. The physician waved his hand and stated that such spiritual medicines were not stocked there and were dangerous to handle. Both Jian and Chiu-Wu silently came to the same conclusion, that such rare spiritual medicines were sought after even by martial artists. After a moment of silence, Jian asked where he could find them. The physician did not answer directly. Instead, he asked whether they had ever heard of the Suryong merchant group. Hyan, standing beside them, responded that he had some knowledge of it and asked if he meant the merchant group based in Hangzhou. The physician confirmed it, explaining that it was one of the largest merchant groups in the Central Plains. He then stated that not long ago, the chairman's son had fallen seriously ill with malaria, prompting an urgent request for him to treat the boy. During that time, the chairman had mentioned possessing a medicine capable of curing the illness, and upon seeing it, the physician had been greatly surprised. Jian frowned and asked whether the medicine had been used. The physician immediately denied it, stating that if Gongqing petroleum had been used to treat malaria, he would have been ridiculed as a physician throughout the world. When he refused its use, the guild master had even responded half-jokingly. Jian fell silent for a moment, and then asked how much it cost. With a somewhat self-deprecating tone, the physician stated that it was priced at 300 taels of gold, as the chairman intended to sell it for that amount. Upon hearing this, Guangho and Haiyan were left speechless in shock. Sama Jin let out a disappointed sigh. Haiyan, still stunned, remarked that a single tael of gold was already enough to cover half a year's worth of medical expenses for them. Chiou-Wu muttered that the seller probably did not offer credit. Jian immediately confirmed that such a thing would not be possible. Chiou-Wu then frowned and suggested that their current resources were insignificant, but if they sold that item, it might be enough. Curious, Guangho and Haiyan asked what he meant. Jian used sound transmission to warn Chiou-Wu not to bring up the demonic Buddha matter again. Chiou-Wu quickly clarified that he had obtained an item during a mercenary assignment at Mount Mandiak, initially thinking it was just a glowing stone, but later learning it was extremely valuable and could be sold for a high price. Jian added that when the appraiser evaluated it, its value had nearly reached 400 taels, shocking them at the time. Once again, Guangho and Haiyan gasped in disbelief. Sama Jin, as if seeing a glimmer of hope, called out tearfully to Jian. Jian gently placed a hand on her shoulder and reassured her that he would find a way to save her. He then turned back to the physician and declared that he would purchase the Gongqing petroleum and asked him to arrange a meeting. The physician readily agreed and promised to contact the merchant group immediately. Sometime later, the scene shifted to Hangzhou. Under clear skies, a vast and magnificent mansion stood before them, its interior even more splendid than its exterior. Inside, the chairman of the Suryong merchant group spoke coldly, declaring that he would not sell. Jian, taken aback, asked him to repeat what he had just said. The chairman reiterated firmly that he was not selling the azure pure stone oil. With a confident expression, he added whether they understood his position. Jian remained silent for a long moment before asking the reason. The chairman looked down at the emerald-colored object before him, his expression darkening with displeasure, and stated that it was not enough. Jian's eyebrows lifted slightly as anger quietly rose within him. He forced himself to stay calm and responded firmly, suggesting that if the chairman believed it was a fake, he could have it reappraised by someone more capable. The chairman dismissed that immediately. That was not the issue. As the head of the Suryong merchant group, he claimed to have a discerning eye. Lowering his voice, he confirmed that the item was indeed a night globe pearl, and a high-grade one at that. Jian grew even more confused and asked why, in that case, the deal was being refused. The chairman looked at Jian with a resentful expression. Though visibly irritated, he suddenly burst into loud laughter, seemingly to ease the tension. He explained that the physician had likely mentioned his earlier remark about selling it for 300 taels, but that had been nothing more than a joke. In truth, they had no intention of selling it at all. His expression then turned serious again as he asked whether Jian understood why the item had been taken out in the first place. Jian answered directly, stating that it had been due to the chairman's son contracting malaria and its intended use as treatment. The chairman confirmed this without hesitation, adding that his son had contracted the chronic form of malaria, the most severe and difficult type to treat. That was precisely why he had brought out the medicine. He further explained that azure pure stone oil was regarded as a spiritual medicine capable of bringing the dead back to life, and that finding it was as difficult as plucking stars from the sky. Chiou-Wu, who had been listening silently, became visibly tense upon hearing this. The chairman continued without concern, explaining his reasoning for refusing the sale. If news of its existence spread, their residence would immediately become a target for countless opportunists and greedy factions. For that reason, it had been kept hidden, reserved only for emergencies involving important members of the merchant guild. He added that the physician had been trusted with the secret and had promised not to disclose it, as he was not someone who broke his word easily. He then added another point with sharp judgment, noting that the physician must have only revealed it while desperately searching for a cure for a critically ill patient. And given the circumstances, that patient could only be someone extremely important. He paused briefly, and Jian understood the implication without needing it spoken aloud. The chairman straightened his posture and continued in a serious tone, stating that once a secret was exposed, others would inevitably come investigating. Therefore, it had to be dealt with immediately. Moreover, such a precious spiritual medicine could not be easily handed over, and in a situation of high demand, it was only natural for the seller to raise the price. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips as he mentioned the profit to be made. He then declared that the price would be set at 500 taels. Chiyo-woo was stunned by the price and blurted out in shock, unable to contain himself. The chairman calmly picked up the night globe pearl again and continued assessing it as though nothing had happened. He resumed the negotiation, stating that, as he had said before, the pearl was of high quality, but its small size meant it was not worth 400 taels of gold. It needed the right buyer to realize its true value. At most, he would only offer 300 taels. He then placed the pearl back down and began calculating additional charges with ease. He added that there would be a 100 tael confidentiality fee for the transaction and another 100 taels due to high demand. In total, an additional 200 taels would be required. In exchange, he would provide the azure pure stone oil. The chairman's blatant greed enraged Chiyo-woo, who shouted curses in frustration, calling him insane and pointing directly at him. He threatened that there were limits to everything and even warned that he might destroy the entire merchant group. Jian immediately stopped him and scolded him for always acting impulsively and causing trouble. He then turned to the matter at hand and asked how much money they currently had. Chiyo-woo answered honestly that they had brought about 120 taels when they left, with some additional funds beyond that. Before he could finish, Jian turned back to the chairman and continued the negotiation himself, stating that he would add another 100 taels and retain only a small amount for living expenses. Chiyo-woo was shocked even further by this decision. Jian ignored his reaction and instead focused his attention on the chairman. He asked directly, with a sharp tone, whether the chairman truly had a good eye, and then questioned what he thought of him. Faced with this unexpected challenge, the chairman paused to assess him carefully. After a moment, he stated that although Jian was young, he carried the aura of someone who had experienced life and death repeatedly. Jian did not hesitate and openly admitted that he had once been forced into the demonic path. Countless lives had been taken by his hand, and it had not been easy to escape that life. He explained that he had made a promise to himself to end his blood-soaked past and live a normal life with his family. He continued speaking about his past as the chairman listened in silence. Jian added that his family was now in difficult circumstances, and he no longer had reason to keep that promise. He then asked directly what the chairman thought he would do under such conditions. The chairman narrowed his eyes, carefully analyzing every detail and possibility in his mind. He concluded that Jian was not lying, as he was openly revealing his darkest past along with his remaining wealth. After a moment of thought, the chairman chose not to answer directly. Instead, he offered a condition. He agreed to make an exception for Jian's situation, but in return, Jian would have to assist him with something in the future. Jian's objective appeared to be achieved, and he immediately accepted the condition. In the end, both parties reached an agreement. The azure pure stone oil was secured, and lodging for the night had also been arranged. A campfire burned steadily as grilled fish finished cooking nearby. Chiyo-woo ate while using his dagger, but the events from that morning still lingered in his mind, making him angry. He muttered that the man was a bastard and added that if it weren't for Jian, he would have flattened him without hesitation. Jian also felt a hint of guilt and apologized for the situation regarding their shared funds before taking a sip of tea. Chiyo-woo responded that it did not matter, since they were talking about saving Jin's life. He said he did not care whose money it was, but what angered him was that the chairman had known their situation and still deliberately raised the price. Frustrated, he muttered that he could not stand it, and even questioned whether they should go back and take it by force. Jian immediately suppressed his rising anger and warned him sharply, asking if he intended to spill blood over medicine meant to save his sister. Chiyo-woo, after a pause, muttered that when it was put that way, Jian was right. Jian picked up a branch from nearby and spoke about his thoughts. He reflected that everything they had done had been for survival after being kidnapped, and although their victims had all belonged to the demonic path, they were still stained with blood. He acknowledged that his own hands were covered with the lives of countless people, including the 10 great powers, all for the sake of unifying the demonic path. He then stated that now that they had escaped that world and entered society, they needed to abandon their old ways. Emphasizing each word, Jian explained that the Central Plains was governed by the order of the Murim world and its great clans, and they would have to adapt to it. He added that when he had given the extra 100 taels, it had been with the intention of leaving some funds for living expenses, and he believed that decision was the right one. He then said that after saving Jin, they would still need to find a way to live. Though it was late, he wanted to take responsibility as the head of the family and live a normal life together, hoping it could also serve as a form of atonement for his late mother. Finally, he added that he would not force Chiyowu to stay, and that he was free to leave whenever he wished. Chiyowu, who had been drinking, suddenly stopped. His eyes widened in shock, and he flailed his hands anxiously as he quickly insisted that he was sorry for being hot-headed. He said they had sacrificed too much to escape their past, and when he thought about their squadmates, he could not abandon them. He added that the current situation reminded him of the old days. Jian, who was eating fish at the time, paused and asked what he meant. Chiyowu fell silent, feeling guilty, and vaguely referred to the past, mentioning the time Jian had obtained Gongqing petroleum from the Guimum clan and given it to him. He admitted that if he had saved some instead of drinking it all, they would not be in this situation. Seeing his regretful expression, Jian could not bring himself to scold him. He simply told him to save it, adding that there had not been much to begin with and that for someone of Chiyowu's size, it had barely been enough anyway. Chiyowu chuckled and admitted he had a point, but added that thanks to it, he had perfected his diamond body technique. He then turned his head slightly and glanced into the darkness behind them, saying that he could smell the blood of those people. Suddenly, a strange sound came from a distance. Chiyowu narrowed his eyes and wondered who it could be. Jian also became alert, his expression sharpening as he gathered his belongings. He said he did not know, but had a bad feeling, and that they would have to see for themselves. The sound of approaching horse hooves grew louder and clearer. Soon, a group of bandits surrounded them completely. Once Jian and Chiyowu were encircled, the riders halted and dismounted one by one, each carrying dangerous weapons and locking onto their targets with hostile intent. Jian glanced at them and remarked calmly that they were not very friendly. One bandit drew his sword and said that the fugitives were surprisingly fast. Another added that they had almost lost them. A third, already with his blade drawn, gave a blunt order to cut their legs first to ensure they could not escape. Jian's tone turned serious as he asked whether they were being followed. The bandits ignored his question and demanded that they hand over their goods if they valued their lives, promising a painless death in return. The atmosphere instantly grew tense. Jian scanned the surroundings, searching for an escape route, while one of the men rode forward with arrogant composure. He warned that otherwise they would suffer endlessly, unable to live, yet not allowed to die. Chiyowu frowned and asked what goods they were referring to. The man pointed directly at their belongings and stated that he meant the item obtained from the Suryong merchant group. Jian's chest burned with anger. The chairman had promised secrecy, yet their location had been exposed regardless. Forcing himself to remain calm, Jian spoke coldly, telling them all to get lost. He said he had seen enough blood in his life and ordered them to leave if they valued their lives. A thug sneered, accusing them of pretending ignorance. He stated that after confirming they had taken the azure pure stone oil, they had tracked them all the way there. The others joined in with mocking laughter, saying they would have already handed it over if it were them. They added that their boss was simply worried the old man might consume it himself, and that if they waited longer, they would just raid the place anyway. They told them it would be better to die peacefully, hand it over, and go meet their ancestors. One of them glanced at Chiyowu and insulted him, asking what that giant bastard was supposed to be, calling him disgusting. Chiyowu did not take offense. Instead, he showed interest. He asked calmly what they meant by giant, and who they were. The thugs laughed mockingly, asking if introductions were really necessary. Another said it would not matter since they were about to die anyway, and that answering a few questions before reincarnation was simply the behavior of a true hero. Jian and Chiyowu exchanged a brief look, silently communicating. One of the thugs proudly declared that they were the Thousand Killers Gang, rulers of the night in Hangzhou, calling themselves heroes of their organization. At that moment, their leader suddenly shouted for everyone to be quiet. He rode forward and glared at them, declaring that he would count to 3 and demanded their decision, 1 for a peaceful death, 2 for a life worse than death. Chiyowu's expression twisted in disgust as he muttered that perhaps he should send them off first instead. The leader's face contorted in rage, veins bulging as he shouted whether they were daring to mock him. He immediately ordered his subordinates to act. They responded in unison. With a cold smile, he commanded them to show the enemies the taste of hell. The entire group raised their weapons toward Jian and Chiyowu. Chiyowu remained calm and turned slightly, asking if it was really necessary to risk their lives over a promise. Jian's eyes hardened with killing intent as he replied that there was no other choice, adding that he had already warned them. Chiyo Wu prepared for the fight while commenting on the smell of blood and the killing intent around them, noting that the opponents had taken quite a few lives. The leader, enraged, ordered his men to tear out the insolent brute's tongues. In response, 3 of the goons drew their swords and charged at Chiyo Wu with full force. Chiyo Wu faced them with a mocking smile, challenging them to come at him. However, before the fight could fully begin, Jian called for everyone to stop for a moment. Chiyo Wu turned to question him, and Jian pointed in a certain direction. Following the gesture, Chiyo Wu noticed something important and fell silent as he spotted 3 mysterious figures approaching through the dark forest. The bandits immediately shifted their attention and surrounded the newcomers. The woman among them observed the situation and assumed they were simply unlucky merchants being robbed. She then asked Jian if they needed any help. Jian, confused by the offer, explained that the attackers were thugs from the Hangzhou underworld and extremely dangerous. Through sound transmission, Chiyo Wu remarked to Jian that the woman and her guards seemed skilled. Jian agreed, noting they appeared to be high-level experts. Chiyo Wu, however, disagreed, saying they were not necessarily high-level, but still strong enough to deal with the thugs easily. Jian added that the real expert was the woman herself and suggested leaving the situation to them. Both of them communicated silently through sound transmission. Jian then addressed the woman directly and requested her assistance. As the bandits moved in, the newcomers prepared for combat. One of the guards asked for instructions, while another reacted irritably to the enemy's killing intent. The woman warned the bandit leader that if they backed down now, no one would be harmed and she would overlook everything so far. The bandit leader, believing the group to be armed bodyguards from a noble family, decided that obtaining the azure pure stone oil was more important than caution. Enraged, he ordered his men to eliminate everyone. Several bandits leapt forward to attack one of the guards, who called them vermin and drew his sword. With a single swift strike, he unleashed a powerful attack that struck all of them at once. The force sent the sheath flying and the bandits were thrown back violently. Moments later, they collapsed, completely defeated. A surviving bandit warned that they were experts and the situation had escalated. The guard calmly sheathed his weapon after finishing the fight. Chiyo Wu, impressed by the display of skill, commented that the man was not bad at all. The bandit leader, humiliated and furious, charged directly at the guards. His attack met the mustache guard's sword, creating a bright clash in the middle of the forest. The mustache guard easily evaded the strike and repositioned himself behind the opponent in a fluid motion. He remarked that the man might have lived if he had accepted the lady's mercy, though he found the situation more interesting this way. The bandit leader continued his assault in rage. The mustache guard calmly evaded while praising his strength. Then, with precise timing, he slipped past another attack and delivered a clean counterstrike. The blade cut through the leader, sending blood spraying as he collapsed lifeless to the ground, ending the battle. Afterward, the first guard questioned why it had taken so long. The mustache guard replied that the opponent had been a restaurant boss. The first guard then asked if he had truly been that strong. The mustache guard revealed that he had a decent amount of momentum, but then pointed behind the first guard, stating that there were prisoners. The first guard intended to eliminate all the bandits, but the woman instructed him to spare those who had surrendered. The mustache guard remarked that it sounded like something their lady would say. With the fight concluded, Jian approached the group and expressed his gratitude for their assistance. The woman responded that it was nothing and that they had simply done what was right in that situation. Jian explained that he should properly introduce himself to his saviors, but that they were currently in a hurry. The woman then told him to proceed ahead, as they would handle the remaining bandits. Jian bowed respectfully in thanks and turned to leave. After walking a few steps, he stopped, turned back, and introduced himself as Sama Jian, stating that if the opportunity ever arose, he would repay this debt of gratitude. Chiyo Wu commented that repaying this debt of gratitude sounded overly dramatic and a bit cringe. Jian immediately told his companion to shut his mouth. The mustache guard muttered that they were a strange pair. The first guard complained that the two had been rude and that, regardless of urgency, they should have cleaned up the mess they caused before leaving. The woman defended them, stating that they had asked for understanding and that she had agreed to their departure. Suddenly, her expression changed as if she had realized something important. Noticing this, the guards asked in alarm what had happened. The woman then explained that the two men had not shown the slightest fear during the entire incident. She repeated the observation, leaving her companions confused. She clarified that even while surrounded by blood and death, they had not flinched once. Their indifference made it seem as though they were merely spectators watching a scene unrelated to them. Some time later, Jian returned to physician Huang Zhang's clinic. He entered a room filled with medicinal supplies while carrying the rare item. Shortly after, physician Huang Zhang rushed into the room and anxiously asked whether he had obtained it. Jian confirmed that he had and carefully began unwrapping the package. The physician expressed regret for not accompanying him, but Jian reassured him not to worry, stating that simply being told how to obtain the azure pure stone oil had been more than enough. Huang Zhang thanked him for understanding and asked about the younger brother who had accompanied him. Jian explained that he had sent him to retrieve his sister, and that he should arrive soon. Huang Zhang reacted slightly awkwardly to this and appeared somewhat uneasy. Noticing the shift in mood, Jian inferred that they might have interrupted some urgent matter concerning the physician. Jian apologized and explained that he had been in a rush because he believed it would be best to begin treatment immediately now that the medicine had been obtained. He added that they would return whenever it was convenient for the physician. The physician replied that Jian had misunderstood him. It was not a matter of lacking time or inconvenience. He explained that there had been another reason he could not accompany them to the Suryong merchant group. Guests from his main family had arrived. Jian was surprised and repeated the physician's words, trying to understand the situation. The physician appeared tense while speaking and covered his mouth with his hand. He then asked whether Jian had ever heard of the medical house of living immortal. Jian was shocked, as it was a medical family reputed to be capable of reviving the dead. He stated that he had not known the physician was connected to the medical house of the living immortal, and added that he had already been impressed when the physician treated his youngest sibling when no one else could, but this revelation was beyond expectation. The physician replied that Jian was flattering him. He clarified that he had not truly treated the patient, but had merely struggled to keep her condition stable. Due to the uniqueness of Jian's sister's condition, he had repeatedly consulted the main family and requested assistance. The main family had shown interest as well, but over the past few years the Central Plains had been devastated by various plagues, leaving them without the manpower to send a doctor. However, as he continued, Jian's expression brightened and he immediately asked whether a doctor from the main family had finally arrived. The physician confirmed that a doctor had indeed come. He explained that the doctor had been traveling to Hangzhou on business and had stopped briefly in Soham. After completing his work, he had agreed to return and examine Jian's sister's condition. He added that the doctor was one of the top figures in the clan, and that compared to him, his own skills were insignificant. Jian immediately stood up and bowed, expressing his gratitude and saying he did not know how he could ever repay such kindness. Huang Zhang responded that it was not kindness but simply his duty as a physician. He added that the doctor had said he would return as quickly as possible after finishing his business, though the exact timing could not be guaranteed. Jian replied that there was no need to worry about timing, and that as long as she could be cured, waiting meant nothing. He said he could wait as many days as necessary. Suddenly, the physician's expression turned serious, and he appeared deeply concerned about something. Jian noticed the change and asked if there was any problem. The physician internally struggled, finding it difficult to give a definitive judgment about the illness, and worried about upsetting Jian's happiness. Because of this, he dismissed the concern and said it was nothing, adding that he would contact them later. Some time later, the family was seen gathered at their country home on a peaceful, sunny day. During the meal, the sister and brother served food, and the atmosphere appeared warm and cheerful. Jian then asked Haiyan where he would be going for his next escort mission. Haiyan replied that his next destination as a warrior would be the city of Wuxi. Jian remarked that it was quite far north from where they currently lived. Haiyan confirmed the distance, but said that if nothing unexpected happened, he would return in 2 weeks. Jian remained silent for a moment, observing his younger brother. Then he finally asked whether Haiyan intended to continue with such a dangerous occupation. Haiyan asked if he should not continue. Jian responded that the job was too dangerous for him, reminding him that he had returned after 12 years and fearing that the same fate might befall his younger brother. Hyan replied that he had started at 17 and had already been doing it for 5 years. He added that there was no guarantee of safety in the future, and if he lived in fear of things that had not yet happened, he would accomplish nothing. He also noted that the treatment and conditions were better compared to other escort bureaus. Jian then revealed that he had saved enough money so he would no longer need to work that job. Hyan questioned this, asking if Jian had not said that he had already spent it all, specifically on Azure Essence. At that moment, Jian suddenly turned to Chiyo Wu with suspicion. Chiyo Wu was startled and let out a nervous chuckle, explaining that he had only been asked too many probing questions. Hyan then spoke up in Chiyo Wu's defense, questioning why Jian was treating him that way and whether he had expected him to hide the truth. He added that even if there was money left, there was nothing specific for him to do with it. Jian suggested purchasing rice paddies and farmland, but Hyan pointed out that none of them knew how to farm. He added that neither of them even remembered much about it, noting that he had only done odd jobs for wages when he was young. Jian then brought up the idea of starting a business, but Hyan dismissed it, saying it would be even more difficult than farming and that without proper talent, it was the easiest way to lose everything. Guangho suddenly spoke up, stating that he voted for business and even offered to secure them a good location if needed. Chiyo Wu questioned what authority he had to do so, sarcastically referencing the Concordant Mind Association. Guangho replied that he might not look impressive, but he did have that level of influence. Chiyo Wu responded skeptically, saying that based on what he had seen before, he doubted it. Hyan then said there was no need to rush, as Jian had only just returned. He added that they also needed to keep an eye on the youngest's treatment. He suggested that if Jian was truly concerned, he could work with him, noting that with Chiyo Wu's size, even the bureau head would eagerly welcome him. Chiyo Wu immediately rejected the idea of being a porter, stating that if he were to work, he would rather be an escort. Jian, however, expressed uncertainty about returning to bureau work. The sister remained silent for a moment before advising them not to make any hasty decisions and to take their time considering their options. Jian agreed, admitting that he had been too rushed. He stated that he would think carefully for now and, in return, wanted them to do the same. He added that he would not force Hyan to quit immediately, but expected him to seriously consider it. Hyan agreed, saying he would think about it seriously as requested. After that, the conversation concluded, and the family decided it was time to eat. Sometimes later, Jian and Chiyo Wu were walking through a bustling city. Chiyo Wu complained repeatedly, saying that finding honest work was extremely difficult, so he suggested taking a break, and Jian agreed. They decided to eat dumplings and walk toward a street food stall. Chiyo Wu ordered 2 plates of meat dumplings and asked if the vendor had any drinks. The vendor apologized and said he did not sell alcohol, so Chiyo Wu simply ordered the food. Seated at a table while waiting, Chiyo Wu asked Jian what they should do, since there did not seem to be any jobs available for them. Jian replied that he was right and that he had already told Hyan the same thing, but after living by the blade his entire life, honest work was not easy to find. Chiyo Wu asked whether Jian truly wanted to try business. Jian replied by asking whether that meant asking Guangho for a favor. Chiyo Wu smiled and said that Jian should allow his family to finally hold their heads high for once. Jian refused, stating that after dealing with Hyan, he intended to pull Guangho out of that gang as well, since it would not be right to rely on favors. He then added that Chiyo Wu did not have the temperament to sit quietly and run a business, joking that they would be lucky if he did not end up hitting customers. Chiyo Wu chuckled and agreed that the assessment was accurate. At that moment, the vendor arrived with their food. The old man served the dumplings, and Chiyo Wu remarked that they should eat before worrying about the future. The dumplings appeared juicy, and one was picked up with chopsticks for the first bite. After tasting it, Chiyo Wu expressed surprise at how good it was. Jian also tried some and agreed, noting that it was far better than the previous day's food and praised the filling. He asked the vendor if it was pork, and the vendor confirmed immediately. Jian reflected on the noticeable difference in taste despite it being the same meat. The vendor proudly stated that no one used meat of such quality. Chiyo Wu suggested they might be using different cuts, but the vendor explained that it was not the cut that mattered, but the butcher's skill. Jian remarked that there must be a specific method for slaughtering pigs, and the vendor clarified that while the method was the same, The skill of the butcher made all the difference. Jian did not fully understand, but Chiu-Wu suddenly sensed a strong danger approaching. His expression turned serious as he went on alert. In an instant, he struck down a charging pig with a single precise blow to the head, killing it immediately. Chiu-Wu asked if Jian was unharmed, and Jian thanked him for the assistance. Chiu-Wu then commented that the sudden appearance of a pig was strange. In the distance, a group of men rushed toward them and the fallen animal. Upon arriving, they asked urgently if Chiu-Wu was all right. Chiu-Wu replied that they were fine, but the pig was not as fortunate. He then joked that they would not be asked to compensate for it since it was the men's negligence, leaving them shocked. An old man then appeared and began shouting at the group, calling them incompetent fools and scolding them for repeated failures. The men immediately bowed and apologized. The old man stated that the apology should be directed toward Jian and Chiu-Wu, not toward him. The group then apologized to both Jian and Chiu-Wu. Jian stated that it was fine as long as no one was injured. The old man also apologized and explained that the candidates had allowed the pig to escape, then thanked them for their assistance. Hearing the word candidates, Jian showed a curious and slightly surprised expression. The old man explained that he owned a butcher shop and was searching for someone to take over the business after him. Jian connected the information and asked if the old man had been the one who butchered the pig used for the dumplings. The old man confirmed seriously that he was indeed the one responsible. Jian then asked if they could take a look at the butcher shop. The old man was confused and questioned the reason, stating that there was nothing worth seeing since it was not a pleasant sight. Jian replied that such a sight was not commonly found either. Hearing this, the old man looked at the two for a moment as if considering the request. Shortly after, he agreed and allowed them to proceed. They were led to the back of the establishment where the butcher shop was located. There, the old man looked at a pig on the ground while his apprentices observed. He stated that the animal was no longer useful since customers had already been involved in catching it. He then asked the candidates why they believed the butchering process had gone wrong. One apprentice answered that the placement of the pin had been incorrect, and that it should have targeted the exact center of the head. The other added that the hammer striking the pin had slipped. The old man agreed with their observations but revealed that the entire process had been flawed from the beginning. He explained that the most important factor was ensuring the target did not realize it was being killed. The apprentices protested, saying they could not possibly know that since animals could not communicate. The master responded with a sharp, disappointed gaze. Another pig was then brought in and began calmly eating from a wooden bowl. The master instructed everyone to observe carefully. Without alerting the animal, the old man positioned the pin above its head. The apprentices were shocked, insisting it was impossible because the animal had previously panicked even at sight. The master explained that the pig did not react because it had not sensed any killing intent. He further explained that animals were extremely sensitive to such intent. To demonstrate, the old man released a faint killing intent, causing the pig to immediately panic. It drooled in fear and retreated, disturbed by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Chiu-Wu sensed the intent and was surprised that the old man had both revealed and concealed it so seamlessly. He asked Jian whether the old man was a martial artist, but Jian dismissed the idea, stating that there was no sign of martial arts training, though the man was clearly exceptional. The old man then prepared for the strike and explained that they were only truly ready when they could avoid revealing any killing intent. Everyone watched in shock as he executed the final blow with the pin. He added that the most important aspect was finishing in a single strike so fast that the target did not even realize it was dying. Chiu-Wu remarked that the animal had been killed without even a scream. Jian agreed, stating that it had been a powerful strike. After the demonstration, the old man shouted at his apprentices, asking what they were doing and reminding them that real work only began after the breath had been cut off. He ordered them to quickly drain the blood from the animal, and they immediately complied. Chiu-Wu commented that the old man's voice was no joke and that he was extremely strict about his work. Nearby, the butcher shop cleaner overheard this and explained that the old man had no children and was looking for someone to inherit and continue his legacy. Chiu-Wu did not understand why it was such a serious matter, since it was only the job of slaughtering animals, and asked Jian for his opinion. Jian replied that if it was something someone had devoted their entire life to, they would naturally feel that way. He compared it to Master Bulto, mentioning how many people he had rejected before Chiyo Wu, a well-known story even in the Black Dragon Valley. Chiyo Wu did not fully understand the comparison, but he remembered that his former master also had an exceptionally powerful voice. Jian added that it was not only his voice that stood out, as his physique had also been enormous. He jokingly suggested that the master likely favored Chiyo Wu because their body types were similar. Chiyo Wu smiled and said he had heard that many times before. Suddenly, Jian declared with a determined expression that they would take over the butcher shop. Chiyo Wu was shocked by the decision. Jian explained that they had searched all day but found no place willing to hire them. He added that things would be different if they continued using the sword, but he wanted work they could be proud of in front of their younger siblings. He also noted that hiding their past was already a burden, and Chiyo Wu had nearly exposed it several times. With that decision made, Jian approached the master butcher to discuss employment. He applied for the position, and the old man asked if both of them intended to join. The master scoffed, assuming that after seeing his work, they believed the job was easy. He then apologized to the customers and asked everyone to leave. Jian immediately objected, stating that after witnessing the old man's technique, no one could possibly think the job was easy. He praised the butcher's skill, calling it an art refined through years of experience. Impressed by the compliment, the master butcher asked them to wait and led them to another area. There, the man walked down a wooden ramp while another pig followed closely behind. Soon after, Jian was positioned in front of the animal, prepared for what was to come. The old man challenged him, telling him to demonstrate his ability if he truly wanted to take over the business. Jian admitted he had never done it before but said he was willing to try. He then knelt down and prepared for the strike while the pig calmly ate from its bowl. With a single precise blow, the animal was struck, and its blood splattered across the wooden ceiling. The master butcher stumbled backward, completely stunned by what he had just witnessed. Wide-eyed, the old man stated that what had taken him a lifetime to learn had been executed effortlessly by the young man. Still in disbelief, he asked again whether Jian had truly never been taught before. Jian calmly replied that he had simply followed what the old man had demonstrated moments earlier. Jian then shouted at Chiyo Wu, ordering him to hurry and hang the animal for the next step. Chiyo Wu grumbled in annoyance at the shouting, but still moved to assist with the task. The master butcher was shocked to see the ease with which he lifted the pig, noting that it normally required 3 or 4 grown men to handle it. Chiyo Wu prepared to hang the animal and asked if he truly needed tools for the job. The old man was confused by the question and asked what he meant. Chiyo Wu proceeded to hang the dead pig using the chains and then walked toward a wooden gate, leaving the others behind. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from outside the butcher shop. The master butcher rushed toward the sound, with Jian following closely behind. Outside, Chiyo Wu had already killed a pig with a single punch. He excitedly stated that, in the end, they only needed to finish the butchering. The old man was left speechless by the display of overwhelming strength and finally understood the situation. He asked whether they were martial artists, and Jian confirmed that they had once been. The old man could not understand why martial artists would choose such physically demanding labor. Jian then explained with a serious expression that they simply wanted to live ordinary lives. The master replied that with their abilities, they could pursue other work, but Jian stated that it had not been easy for them. After hearing this, the old man realized that the 2 young men had lived far from peaceful lives. He sighed and decided to accept them as apprentices in the butcher shop. He remarked that it was unfortunate he did not have much time left, and Jian asked him to teach them properly. Jian confidently assured him that the master would not regret his decision. Some time later, the scene shifted to a cat resting peacefully on the roof of a house. Inside, a calligraphy brush moved rapidly as an important message was being written. A man named Yango Jung reacted in shock upon hearing the name of the Healing Sun Medical House. His servant, Dang Beck, reported that a member of the imperial family who had retired to Hangzhou had fallen gravely ill, and that the imperial court had personally requested assistance from the Healing Sun Medical House. Yango Jung responded that the physicians of the Healing Sun Medical House who were heading to Hangzhou had clashed with the Gaidong, finding the situation strange and questioning why they would act so violently without reason. Dang Beck replied that the Gaidong had been pursuing the Azure Pure Stone Oil. Upon hearing this, Yango Jung became even more furious, complaining that such a valuable item had been wasted on treating a declining member of royalty. However, Dang Baek corrected him, stating that it had not been used for the royals' treatment. He explained that the owner of the azure pure stone oil was someone else, and that there was still a chance to obtain it. Yang Do-young poured himself a drink and asked whether the owner was someone else, questioning if it was not the property of the Healing Sun Medical House. Dang Baek replied that it was indeed someone else, explaining that the Gaedong had originally been chasing that person when they clashed with the Healing Sun Medical House. Yang Do-young stated that he should have said so earlier, then demanded to know who it was and who possessed the azure pure stone well. Dang Baek replied that it was a man named Sama Jian from Shaoxing, who had purchased the azure pure stone oil that the leader of the Water Dragon Merchant Union had been secretly keeping in order to treat his younger sister. Yang Do-young revealed a mocking smile and commented that he had not expected the greedy old leader of the Water Dragon Merchant Union to have obtained the azure pure stone oil. He then considered it an opportunity beyond measure, noting that if it was truly the azure pure stone oil, it could cure the illness of the young member most valued by the Yongo clan. He immediately ordered his subordinate to use any means necessary to obtain it. He further instructed that if the oil had already been used, they should capture the sister who had consumed it, as she would not have fully absorbed its effects yet, and the medicinal power would still remain in her blood. Meanwhile, at the butcher shop, Jian was seen cutting meat with precise and skilled movements under the master butcher's watchful eye. The old man laughed and praised his ability, stating that the young man's skill was remarkable to observe. He also commended Jian's rapid learning and said there was nothing more he could teach him. Jian humbly thanked him, attributing his progress to the master's guidance. The old man responded that he was the one who should be grateful, as he had hoped the butcher shop would maintain its reputation. He added that if it failed to do so, it would be better for it to disappear entirely. His hand trembled slightly, revealing his emotional state, and he thanked Jian for fulfilling his wish, stating that he could now depart in peace. Jian replied that he was the one who should be grateful, as he could finally settle down. Suddenly, Chiu Wu appeared, complaining that they could have simply cut the meat casually and sold it. He then threw meat into a barrel and questioned whether Jian truly needed to learn such detailed techniques. The old man told Jian not to give Chiu Wu a knife and to assign him only heavy labor, noting that his skill in slaughtering cows and pigs was adequate enough for that role. Chiu Wu smiled smugly and said that the old man had finally made a sensible decision. Afterward, the three of them took a break while Jian poured drinks for everyone. Chiu Wu agreed to follow the master's instruction and admitted that he did not have a talent for handling knives. Jian calmly took a sip and told him to do as he wished. Chiu Wu thanked him and then offered a drink to the master butcher as well. However, Jian struck his arm and shouted that it was completely inappropriate. Chiu Wu did not understand why and argued that it was only a single drink since the old man was nearing the end of his life. The master butcher then perked up and stated that even if he were to die at that moment, he could not refuse a drink on such a day. At the old man's excitement, Jian showed a shocked and speechless expression. Some time later, Haiyan returned from his escort mission and looked at the new butcher shop, thinking that they had truly started something new. Suddenly, his sister appeared while sweeping the place and excitedly asked when he had arrived. Haiyan immediately stepped forward and took the broom from her, telling her that her body was weak and she should not be doing such work. The young woman replied that it was nothing much, then added that Jian had taken over the butcher shop. Haiyan said he had already heard on the way. She replied that since Jian had worked so hard to obtain the butcher shop, it should not be left dirty. Haiyan told her to stop. He then placed his bag on the table and asked whether the business at the new butcher shop was going well. She replied that it was not yet, explaining that only a few days had passed since the previous owner's death and the official opening, so it would be unreasonable to expect immediate success. Haiyan then asked about the old owner passing away. She explained that he had passed peacefully on the night Jian took over the butcher shop. At that moment, Jian entered the room carrying a tray. Noticing Haiyan, he asked when he had arrived and said he had been worried because the escort mission had taken so long. Haiyan replied that he had just returned and was fine, but added that Jian had truly caused an incident. He also said the escort mission had not been long at all and had ended quickly. Jian responded that it had turned out that way and asked if Haiyan disliked it. Haiyan said he did not dislike it, but was simply surprised. He had never imagined Jian would take over a butcher shop. He then asked whether it would truly be alright, noting that it was a famous establishment, and that the former owner was highly skilled. He warned that even a slight drop in skill would lead to constant criticism, and that even doing well would only barely break even. Jian reassured him not to worry, stating that he had confidence, and that if they were to make a living, all of them would need to work hard. Suddenly, Guangho appeared in the distance, shouting desperately for his siblings. Jian stopped what he was doing and asked what was happening outside. The youngest rushed in and shouted that they had finally arrived. Chiu Wu lost patience, grabbed him by the ear, and demanded that he stop talking nonsense and explain properly. Guangho shouted for him to let go and complained about the violence. Chiu Wu released him and laughed, saying it was a sign of affection, then added that he had never seen real violence, and offered to demonstrate it. Guangho rubbed his ear and declined, saying he had heard the same thing before. He then turned to Jian and revealed that a messenger from the clinic had arrived. Everyone reacted in surprise. Guangho explained that the doctor who had gone to Hangzhou had returned and instructed them to bring the sister immediately. Without hesitation, Jian removed his apron and said they should leave at once. Some time later, they arrived at the clinic, where a large wooden sign stood at the entrance. Inside, Dr. Huang Zhong greeted them and said he had been waiting for their arrival. Jian politely replied that they had rushed over as soon as they received the news and wondered if they had come too quickly. Huang Zhong stated that it was no problem, as the doctor from the main family wanted to see the patient as soon as possible. He then introduced a woman named Huang Yang, who had come to assist with the treatment. Upon seeing her face, Jian was completely shocked and left speechless. Huang Yang greeted him with a faint smile and remarked that their meeting was quite a coincidence. Behind her stood the two guards who had previously helped them during the fight with bandits in the dark forest. The mustache guard commented that he now understood why the Heaven-slaying faction had pursued them so fiercely. Noticing their reactions, Huang Zhong asked whether they already knew each other. Jian explained that they had been attacked while obtaining the azure pure stone oil, and that she had assisted them in the forest. The doctor laughed, and remarked that the connection between them was quite unusual. Jian then said that he regretted leaving so quickly without properly expressing his gratitude, and once again thanked her for her help at that time. Huang Yang replied that there was no need, explaining that since he had been urgently trying to obtain the notoriously rare azure pure stone oil for his sick sister, he must have been pressed for time. Jian then introduced Gina, stating that she would be the one undergoing examination. Gina introduced herself and said she looked forward to the treatment. Huang Yang responded warmly, calling her as beautiful as a celestial maiden and adding that she should be the one requesting cooperation. She then explained that illness could not be cured by a physician alone, and that only when both patient and physician worked together could a disease be overcome. Gina nodded in agreement, and Huang Yang smiled in satisfaction at her response. She then asked everyone to leave the room so she could examine her alone. Some time later, about half an hour passed while the others waited anxiously outside. Chiu Wu complained about the long wait, while Jian remained silent, watching the door. Finally, the door opened and Huang Yang stepped out. Jian immediately rushed forward and anxiously asked about his sister's condition. With a serious expression, Huang Yang revealed that she had identified the illness. She explained that Gina had been born with heavenly Yin divine veins. Huang Zhong, confused, asked whether it was heavenly Yin divine veins and not the 9 Yin severed meridians. Huang Yang explained that while they were similar, they were different conditions. She added that just before leaving the main family, she had encountered a patient with the same symptoms. At first, she had mistaken it for the 9 Yin severed meridians and attempted treatment, but something had felt wrong. She had noticed a subtle difference, and only after discovering records of the heavenly Yin divine veins in the main family archives was she able to correctly identify the condition. Chiu Wu then asked whether it could be cured. Huang Yang replied that she could not give a definite answer. She explained that the previous patient had already missed the proper timing for treatment. However, according to the records, the main family's acupuncture techniques did have an effect on the heavenly Yin divine veins. Chiu Wu then asked what had happened to the patient mentioned in the records and whether they had survived. At that question, the doctor fell silent and looked away, indicating that the answer was not a good one. Night fell over the clinic, and a thick fog spread across the entire courtyard. Sama Jian sat silently while Guangho, unable to hide his concern, asked whether things would go well. Chiu Wu responded with irritation, questioning why he kept asking and insisting that it had to go well. There was no other outcome. Guangho, still uneasy, wondered how long it would take to get the results. Chiu Wu pointed out that not even 10 minutes had passed and that the treatment had likely not even properly begun yet. Jian and Chiu Wu waited in silence, their expressions heavy with worry. The tension was especially visible in Jian's eyes, which revealed the depth of his fear. His thoughts drifted back to earlier, recalling how Huang Yang had hesitated to explain what had happened to the patient mentioned in the records. Remembering her expression, Jian had lowered his head and quietly concluded that the treatment must have failed. Huang Yang had confirmed his fear, and Jian had immediately demanded to know why it had failed. The doctor explained that, first, it had been far too late. The patient had been 21 when she came to the main family, and by then, the yin energy had already seeped deep into her marrow, rendering all medicine useless. Second, although the symptoms seemed similar, the yin energy within someone born with the heavenly yin divine veins was far more powerful than that of the 9 yin severed meridians, making the condition far more severe. Physician Huang Zhang, surprised, questioned this explanation. He pointed out that no one with the 9 yin severed meridians had ever lived past 18, yet this patient had survived until 21. Huang Yang clarified that it was only due to the azure pure stone oil that the patient had managed to cling to life beyond 20. Even so, Jian had muttered bitterly that she had still died despite taking such a rare medicine. Huang Yang then added that if the main family's acupuncture had been applied at the same time as the azure pure stone oil, the outcome might have been different. In response, Jian had simply requested that she take good care of his sister, emphasizing that she was one of the few precious family members he had left. The doctor had remained silent, clearly understanding the weight behind that desperate plea. Returning to the present, those memories weighed heavily on Jian's mind. Although Huang Yang had spoken calmly, he could not shake his unease. He wondered what he would do if something went wrong, even in the slightest. Nearby, Guangho complained that it felt like 2 hours had already passed, coughing as he spoke. Chiu Wu immediately told him to be quiet. Suddenly, Guangho flinched, sensing something approaching. Before he could react further, Chiu Wu struck him, knocking him unconscious. Chiu Wu then asked if Jian had sensed it as well. Jian confirmed that he had, his gaze sharpening as he remarked that unwanted guests had arrived. Together they turned toward the bamboo forest from which the presence emanated. The thick fog and dense bamboo created an atmosphere filled with tension and danger. Moments later, a group of armed men emerged, rushing through the trees. Among them, Deng Bek demanded to know their location, while another reported that they were the central guards and needed to hurry. Deng Bek declared that their primary objective was the azure pure stone oil. He assigned the assault on the medical house of the living immortal to himself, the Vice Hall Master, along with Squads 1 and 2, while instructing Squad 3 accordingly. His subordinates acknowledged his orders, and he commanded them to ensure that no one escaped, to secure the front gate first, and to move immediately. The men scattered at high speed to carry out their mission. However, before they could proceed, Chiu Wu suddenly appeared in front of them, mocking them as rats. The group halted in shock at his sudden appearance. Without hesitation, Chiu Wu struck one of them, crushing his head with a single blow. The leader stared in disbelief at the display of strength, stunned by what he had just witnessed. Facing Chiu Wu, he demanded to know who he was. Chiu Wu mocked the intruders, questioning what they were doing, dressed the same and rampaging around in a group. Deng Bek, seeing the corpse of his subordinate, was inwardly shaken. He recognized that killing with a single strike required immense skill. However, judging by Chiu Wu's appearance, he doubted this man was the one they had been searching for, Sama Jian. Without hesitation, Deng Bek ordered that he would personally deal with Sama Jian and left Chiu Wu to his subordinate. With that, he dashed forward at incredible speed, leaving a trail of energy behind him. Chiu Wu turned in surprise as he sensed the sudden movement, commenting that the man was far too fast for him to easily keep up. When one of the goons questioned why he wasn't trying to stop his boss, Chiu Wu seemed genuinely confused and asked if the man had used the lightness skill. The goon confirmed it, warning that his comrades could be in danger. Hearing this, Chiyo Wu chuckled and mockingly asked if they were worried about his boss. With a confident grin, he proposed a bet, wondering which of their leaders would fall first. Provoked, the man grew angry, unable to tolerate Chiyo Wu's arrogance. He prepared for battle, only for Chiyo Wu to invite all of them to attack him at once. The fight erupted instantly. The enemies launched a coordinated assault, charging from all directions to surround him. Yet Chiyo Wu stood firm, a mocking smile on his face as they leapt at him simultaneously. In the next moment, a massive burst of energy exploded outward, sending every attacker flying. Watching from a distance, their leader felt the sheer force of the attack and was stunned by Chiyo Wu's overwhelming strength. Realizing his men were in danger, he decided to quickly eliminate Sama Jian, retrieve the item, and return to assist his ally. However, just as he resolved himself, Sama Jian suddenly appeared before him, calmly asking what he was thinking about so intensely. Startled, the man realized he hadn't sensed Jian's presence at all. He immediately reached for his sword, preparing for combat. Jian, unfazed, questioned his identity and purpose. Deng Bek quickly understood that this was indeed Sama Jian. He cursed inwardly, realizing that the supposed butcher shop owners were far from ordinary. They were monsters. Jian noted coldly that the man didn't seem willing to answer. Without further words, Deng Bek launched a swift and powerful attack. Yet Jian effortlessly avoided it, leaning back at the last possible moment. The ease with which he evaded the strike enraged Deng Bek, whose eyes burned with fury. A fierce exchange followed, the two clashing rapidly in the forest. Then, without warning, Jian caught the incoming blade with his bare hands. The sheer display of strength left his opponent stunned. Gripping the weapon firmly, Jian demonstrated both power and control. With a subtle movement, he disarmed the man and drove the blade into his feet, forcing him to collapse onto the forest floor in agony. Standing over him, Jian once again demanded to know his origins and purpose, specifically asking whether he had come for Chongsimwen or for the medical house of the living immortal. The mention of the azure pure stone oil visibly shocked the man. Jian deduced their true objective and questioned how they had learned he possessed it, given how few people knew. Facing defeat, the man merely gave a mocking smile, seemingly accepting death. Jian offered him a chance to live in exchange for answers. However, before anything more could be said, the man collapsed lifelessly. Lying on the ground, foam gathered at his mouth, revealing that he had taken poison to avoid revealing any information. Jian immediately understood what had happened and regretted not instructing Chiyo Wu to keep some enemies alive. Just then, he sensed another presence. Moments later, Chiyo Wu appeared and casually asked whether the job had already been finished. Jian asked if he had dealt with all of them, and Chiyo Wu confirmed it with a proud smile. The answer left Jian speechless, his expression filled with disappointment. He realized he shouldn't have sent his companion, as the aftermath of Chiyo Wu's rampage could be seen in the background. Chiyo Wu then asked if the enemy was dead, and Jian confirmed that he had died before revealing anything. With a smirk, Chiyo Wu remarked that it was obvious, given Jian's complete focus on him. He then lamented that they still didn't know who was behind the attack. Jian, however, remained calm, stating that it didn't matter. The azure pure stone oil was no longer in play, and if their enemies came in numbers, they would simply meet the same fate. Chiyo Wu, smiling, remarked that such situations weren't entirely bad. To him, enemies swarming in would at least bring some excitement to an otherwise dull daily life. The young man grew serious and questioned Chiyo Wu's earlier words about boring daily life and vitality, asking if he wanted to see more blood despite having already witnessed so much. Chiyo Wu became slightly embarrassed and quickly clarified that it was not what he meant. Jian then stated that what he truly disliked was having his peace disturbed, and Chiyo Wu agreed with him. After that, Jian instructed Chiyo Wu to clean up the remaining mess by himself. Chiyo Wu was visibly shocked, but Jian explained that he had gotten carried away and would be moving ahead first, leaving the cleanup of the bamboo forest to him. Chiyo Wu complained inwardly, wondering how he was supposed to finish everything alone. Some time later, he eventually arrived back at the entrance after completing the cleanup, and silently acknowledged the job was done. Inside the room, Jian heard the door open and saw Chiyo Wu return. However, upon sensing something, Jian immediately questioned whether he had set the forest on fire. Chiyo Wu gave an awkward laugh and explained that there had been too much blood on the bamboo, then quickly changed the subject, asking if the matter was still unresolved and why it was taking so long. Jian calmly replied that it would go well. Chiyo Wu then mentioned that the family of the living immortal healer was involved and that they even possessed the azure pure stone oil, but Jian interrupted him, stating that the person in question was coming out. At that moment, the door opened and Huang Zhang stepped out, coughing heavily and appearing exhausted. Without hesitation, Jian rushed forward and anxiously asked about his sister's treatment. The doctor explained that the golden needle acupuncture performed that day had gone well and that her condition had clearly improved. Upon hearing this, both companions were left completely shocked and speechless. Overcome with relief and gratitude, Jian took the doctor's hands and repeatedly thanked him for his help. The doctor, smiling calmly, invited them inside so he could explain everything in detail. Inside the room, Huang Yang was seen coughing repeatedly and appearing weak after the procedure. Jian looked at her with a serious and worried expression. Huang Yang explained that the foul smell in the room was due to the expulsion of turbid qi from the patient's body. A guard with a mustache stated that circulating qi should be the priority for her condition. Huang Yang responded that it was not that severe. She further explained that they had done their best using the azure pure stone oil along with her family's golden needle acupuncture, but they had ultimately failed to achieve a complete cure. Jian asked in confusion whether she had not just said the patient had improved. Huang Yang clarified that the patient had indeed improved significantly compared to before, but a full recovery had not been achieved, and she apologized for that. Jian responded that he had heard the procedure was one that could also harm the physician, and he expressed nothing but gratitude. Huang Yang, however, questioned the idea of harm, stating that it had actually been a fortunate opportunity for her. She explained that encountering such a rare condition and being able to use the azure pure stone oil had been valuable, and that treating patients was naturally the duty and principle of a physician. Chiyo Wu showed a furious and dissatisfied expression at the outcome of the treatment. He commented that he had felt uneasy ever since Huang Yang mentioned that others had already failed before. Because of this remark, the doctor's two guards turned serious and visibly irritated. Chiyo Wu then became angry and told his boss that enough had been said, insisting that in the end it was all just empty words. With a mocking smile, he repeated the phrase, "Stroke of luck," adding that it must be nice for her. The guards immediately became enraged and shouted, asking if he was insulting the young lady and the main house. With his eyes glowing, Chiyo Wu questioned whether he had said anything wrong and then released aura shockwaves that pushed them back, leaving the doctor and others completely shocked. A powerful aura surrounded him, but Jian called out his name to stop the escalation. With his eyes glowing red, Jian ordered Chiyo Wu to apologize immediately. Huang Yang, sensing the pressure of the aura, was shocked and thought that Jian might even be stronger than Chiyo Wu. Without hesitation, Chiyo Wu bowed and apologized, shocking everyone with his obedience. Jian then also apologized for his friend's behavior and stated that he would take responsibility as well. Huang Yang responded that there was no need, adding that she herself should apologize for the situation. She explained that while she had hoped for no complications, she could not completely rule out the possibility of a relapse. Huang Zhang immediately dismissed the concern as nonsense, stating that the golden needle acupuncture had been flawless in anyone's eyes and could not have been performed better. However, he added that the condition was far more vicious than the 9 severed meridians, and there had been a miscalculation. Jian, confused, asked for clarification and tried to understand what had actually gone wrong. Huang Zhang revealed that he had overestimated the power of the azure pure stone oil, shocking Jian. He further explained that the medicine alone was not enough to suppress the illness's energy. Chiyo Wu grew frustrated and questioned what kind of medicine would ever be sufficient if even such a rare item had failed. Huang Yang explained that it was not about sufficiency, but about suitability, stating that different conditions required different remedies, especially in cases of extreme and unbalanced energies. Jian realized that his sister's condition required a more specific treatment, and Huang Yang confirmed this. With a determined expression, he asked what kind of medicine was needed to save her life. The doctor revealed that the required item was the Shaolin Great Revitalizing Pill. Sometime later, the scene shifted to the butcher shop, where a man was seen walking peacefully on a sunny day. Inside the shop, Chiu Wu was eating and casually asked if they were going to rob someone, leaving Jian confused. The big man then took a drink and clarified that he was referring to the Shaolin Temple. Jian remained silent. Chiu Wu asked if he intended to go, and Jian replied that he would think about it since his sister's condition had improved. Chiu Wu understood that he would eventually go, but Jian firmly refused for the moment. Surprised, Chiu Wu listened as Jian explained that the doctor had assured him his sister would be fine for now. With a calm expression, Jian said he had just returned and wanted to spend time with his siblings. He also explained that the journey was long and that the butcher shop needed to be stabilized first. Chiu Wu then considered that there would be no one to manage the shop and concluded that if it was to continue, they needed to train someone. At this suggestion, Jian looked confused and asked who they could possibly train. Chiu Wu suggested using his two brothers and reminded Jian that the boss had wanted them to quit their jobs. Because of this, the trip to Shaolin would have to wait until both of them learned how to properly run the business. He added that Haiyan was easygoing, but expressed concern about Guangho. At that moment, someone suddenly appeared at the door. Guangho rushed in and desperately shouted for Jian. Jian told him to calm down and asked what was going on. With a panicked expression, Guangho revealed that their second brother had been kidnapped. Jian was left completely shocked and speechless by the news. He then asked what Guangho meant by kidnapped, while Chiu Wu observed the situation seriously. Guangho explained that his brother had been taken by bandits during an escort mission for the agency. Filled with anger, Chiu Wu wondered what kind of bandits would dare to do such a thing. After hearing this, Jian decided they needed to go to the agency where Haiyan worked first. Sometime later, they arrived in front of the large gate of the Juhi Escort Bureau. The boy confirmed this was the place, and the group prepared to enter and investigate. Inside the courtyard, the place was crowded with people. Many were asking about their kidnapped relatives. An official from the Juhi Escort Bureau tried to calm the crowd, telling them that negotiations with the kidnappers were currently underway. Someone in the crowd questioned what kind of negotiations were being discussed. An agency member explained that he could not reveal details, but assured them that the hostages' lives were the top priority and asked for trust so everyone would return safely. A young man remarked that it sounded like a standard response and suggested they go ask directly. Guangho stepped forward and asked whether a rescue team would be sent, surprising the official. When asked who he was, Guangho introduced himself as Huang Haiyan's brother. The official expressed sympathy and stated that the agency intended to resolve the matter through negotiation, then again asked the crowd to wait patiently before returning inside without further explanation. Chiu Wu commented that the man did not seem sincere, and Guangho agreed that something felt suspicious. He suggested speaking with one of Haiyan's colleagues. He then approached an escort warrior named Zhang Xiang and directly asked what was really happening and whether negotiations were truly underway. Zhang Xiang hesitated but confirmed that negotiations were ongoing and that everyone would return safely soon. Guangho did not believe him and pulled him aside to speak privately. Seeing this, Jian told Chiu Wu that they should follow them to hear the conversation. In an alley, Guangho demanded the truth and told Zhang Xiang to stop avoiding the question. Zhang Xiang finally revealed that the bandits were demanding money, and the amount was extremely large. Guangho immediately asked how much, and Zhang Xiang revealed the ransom was 100 taels of gold. Guangho was left completely shocked and speechless. At that moment, Jian's voice was heard asking again to confirm the ransom amount, ensuring it was indeed 100 taels. Zhang Xiang, surprised, asked why they had not come inside. Jian explained that they had intended to, but the youngest among them had fainted suddenly. Zhang Xiang became worried and asked about Gina's condition. Jian replied that she had likely fainted due to shock from something she heard. Zhang Xiang then asked if she was feeling better, and Jian confirmed that she was now fine. With a sigh, Zhang Xiang said that was at least a relief and felt somewhat calmer about the situation. Chiu Wu then questioned how an agency as small as theirs could even manage a ransom demand of 100 taels of gold. Zhang Xiang, slightly annoyed, replied that the Juhi Escort Bureau was actually quite large and well known throughout the region. Chiu Wu then stared at him and asked whether they were planning something else, such as sending out a rescue squad. Zhang Xiang was completely shocked and asked how he had figured it out, since they had been trying to keep it a secret. The big man explained that the atmosphere alone made it obvious, though he questioned whether the agency could handle the situation on its own. Jang Xiang revealed that they were expecting support from nearby forces and that messengers had already been sent to various locations. Chiu Wu expressed doubt, stating that the bandits had likely already anticipated their response. Jian then asked what kind of bandits would do such a thing, since there was usually an unspoken boundary between bandits and official agencies. Jang Xiang became angry and said they still had not learned their lesson even after the destruction of their fortress. Hearing this, Jian looked surprised and asked about the fortress. Jang Xiang explained that the famous Golden Tiger Fortress had been completely destroyed not long ago, adding that the news had spread widely throughout the region afterward. Jian then asked whether the Golden Tiger Fortress had returned and what that meant for the current situation. Jang Xiang explained that the leader who had previously left the fortress had now returned to his original position. Hearing this, Jian became serious and thoughtful about the new development. He then called out to his younger brother, who looked at him in confusion. Jian told him that he had asked the neighbor to look after Gina and instructed him to take proper care of her. Guangho asked where he was suddenly going, and Jian replied that he had somewhere to be. Chiu Wu reassured Guangho, telling him that they had many connections and would find a way to rescue Haiyan, advising him not to worry and to take care of the youngest. The scene then shifted to the head office of the Juhi Escort Bureau. The agency chief was shocked by the report, and asked his subordinate if it was truly accurate. The subordinate confirmed it, and reported that a message from the Blaze Escort Agency had arrived confirming the situation. The chief, visibly relieved and excited, said that this was good news and that the heavens must be on their side. He then asked whether the warriors of the Namgung clan were truly assisting them. The subordinate confirmed that they had already departed for the Golden Tiger bandit camp. The chief, surprised, asked if they had moved that quickly, noting that the Blaze Escort Agency had been attacked by those same bandits before them. He insisted that they must hurry as well, since lives were at stake. The subordinate immediately responded that he would make the necessary preparations at once. The scene then shifts to the destroyed fortress, where bandits are stationed on guard duty. Inside a completely ruined room, a man is seen calmly drinking and eating as if nothing is wrong. The bandit chief questions whether there has been any reaction from the Juhi Escort Bureau and asks how many times they have cut off and sent the hostages' ears. One of his men reports that this is already the 4th time they have done so. The leader becomes furious, complaining that even after 4 hostages, there has been no meaningful response. The subordinate then reports a suggestion that has been made. He explains that the agency cannot prepare the full ransom at once and asks whether they would accept half first. The chief takes a sip of his drink, appearing somewhat interested in the proposal. The man continues, explaining that if half the prisoners are returned, the remaining ransom money will be prepared. The leader angrily complains that the reputation of Great No Guk has fallen and questions who destroyed the fortress while he was away. The subordinate replies that everyone has been mobilized, but no clues have been found. Enraged, the chief crushes the liquor bottle in his hand. His eyes glow as he states that he wants to find the culprits, but rebuilding the fortress must come first. He explains that he had even bowed to the Green Forest and received support from the head patrol and elders, and now he intends to exploit them fully. He orders that the captive's eyes and ears be removed and sent ahead of schedule. The subordinate immediately agrees. At that moment, a man suddenly appears and suggests that instead they should cut off the captives' heads and send them next time. The fortress chief turns toward him with a furious expression. The newcomer identifies himself as the chief inspector and warns that pushing things further will provoke a serious response, as sects and clans connected to the agency may form a subjugation squad. With a malicious smile, the inspector states that this is exactly what he wants. He claims that even if a subjugation squad is sent, the elders, the supreme masters of the 18 Green Forest strongholds, are on their side, making it irrelevant. His companions agree, stating that unless the Imperial Army intervenes, there will be no surprises. The fortress chief falls silent, seemingly accepting the plan. He then orders his subordinate to behead a hostage and send it to the agency immediately. Suddenly, a massive explosion destroys part of the wooden wall. The bandit chief turns around in shock, completely stunned by the sudden attack. A moment later, Chiu Wu appears through the smoke, kicking through the debris in his path. Jian lands behind him, and Chio Wu casually remarks that the place has already been rebuilt quite a bit despite its ruined state. The enraged chief demands to know who they are and whether they are from the Juhi Escort Bureau. Chio Wu responds that it seems a rescue team has indeed arrived. The inspector then questions them, asking if they are not the rescue team, then what they are. Jian steps forward and states that there is no need for them to be curious about a pair who simply run a small shop in the market. He then asks whether the man is the leader of the Golden Tiger Bandit camp. With a mocking smile, the inspector asks what would happen if he is indeed the master of the place. With a cold expression, Jian declares that if he is the master of the fortress, then he must die. The leader of the Golden Tiger Bandit camp, No GM, immediately unsheathed his sword in anger and shouted insults at the intruders. The inspector stopped him, telling him to hold on and instead capture them, noting that the elder's boredom had reached its limit. No GM sheathed his sword and acknowledged the order. The silver-haired elder, Peng, one of the supreme masters of the 18 Green Forests, stepped forward, expressing satisfaction at the timing as he had been growing bored. Chio Wu pointed at the elders and told Jian that he would handle the rest while Jian dealt with the bandit chief. Jian questioned whether he simply wanted a fight, to which Chio Wu replied casually that it would serve two purposes at once. Jian allowed him to proceed. Chio Wu stepped forward, and after a brief moment of silence between him and Elder Peng, he launched an attack with a punch. The elder dodged immediately and countered with his staff, striking Chio Wu's chest. However, the impact forced the elder backward due to Chio Wu's defensive aura. Realizing that even such a powerful strike had been blocked, the elder understood that Chio Wu was no ordinary opponent. He grew serious, circulating his internal energy and assuming a proper fighting stance. Chio Wu found the situation amusing and remarked that the elder seemed at least to be a demonic path master, deciding that he would have to become serious as well. The elder, sensing Chio Wu's calmness despite the pressure, recognized that his opponent was not someone to be underestimated. Chio Wu provoked him, asking if he would attack or not. Angered, the elder charged forward again, convinced his next strike would land cleanly. However, his weapon shattered upon colliding with Chio Wu's defensive aura. In response, Chio Wu delivered a punch that sent the elder flying backward toward another elder. The second elder caught Peng and, shocked, asked if he was alright. Peng warned him to be careful before losing consciousness. Realizing that a top master like Peng Yo-sang had been defeated in a single exchange, the second elder was shaken by the realization of Chio Wu's strength. Meanwhile, Chio Wu jokingly complained that his opponent had managed to strike through his protective aura and asked Jian whether he had grown weaker or if the elder had simply been strong. Jian bluntly replied that he had grown weaker. Flustered, Chio Wu admitted that he had become rusty from lack of proper combat, then challenged all remaining opponents to attack him at once. The inspector sought guidance, and the remaining elder decided they would abandon any concern for appearances. He would create an opening while everyone else launched a full assault. The elder charged first, but as he approached, Chio Wu struck him directly in the face while evading his attack, sending him crashing into the ground with enough force to shatter it. The inspector then ordered a full assault. The bandits rushed forward, but their swords shattered upon contact with Chio Wu's defensive aura. Chio Wu mocked them as insignificant, while the inspector warned them to evade his attacks. Before they could react, Chio Wu unleashed a burst of inner energy, blasting them all backward. The inspector, stunned by the overwhelming display of power, could only watch in disbelief. The remaining elder attempted another attack, but Chio Wu welcomed the challenge. The elder, determined not to die alone, gathered all his remaining energy into a final strike. Chio Wu dismissed the sentiment and met the attack head-on. Their fists collided, producing a shockwave, but the elder was quickly overpowered. Seizing the opening, Chio Wu delivered a final blow that killed him instantly. Seeing this, the inspector grew terrified. Chio Wu mocked him for attempting to save himself. The inspector desperately tried to bargain, claiming that his father was the chief of the Green Forest 18 strongholds, but before he could finish, Chio Wu silenced him and crushed his skull, killing him on the spot. Afterward, Chio Wu casually remarked that such moments of violence could be enjoyable. He then informed Jian that everything was finished. Jian turned his attention to No GM, stating that only he remained. No GM, realizing the overwhelming gap in strength, understood that his opponents had effortlessly defeated the Green Forest's top masters. Although he considered retreat, he was filled with anger and unwilling to accept defeat. Jian addressed him, reminding him that he had asked who they were, and suggested that it should be enough to say that they were the ones who had destroyed the stronghold. No Jian, enraged and humiliated, declared that this was the Golden Tiger stronghold and swore to kill them. The scene shifted to a forest nearby, where Chief Escort Hu Yugan of the Juhi Escort Agency was leading the forces of the Namgung clan through a dense path. A young man of the Namgung clan, Namgung Min, complained about the constant thorn bushes along the way. Yugan turned and apologized, explaining that they had taken the fastest route while avoiding detection, which made the road rough. Namgung Min brushed it off with a chuckle, remarking that compared to going after bandits, a rough road was nothing. Namgung Jiang, who was leading the force, apologized on his behalf, noting that he was still young. He then addressed the clan members, reminding them that while subjugation was important, the safety of the hostages must come first. He warned them not to act rashly and endanger lives. The group responded in unison, acknowledging his command. Satisfied, Namgung Jiang resumed leading the group, telling them to keep moving. However, after a moment he suddenly stopped, sensing something unusual. Namgung Min approached him in confusion and asked what was wrong. Namgung Jiang explained that there had been fighting ahead, though it seemed to have already ended. Min wondered if someone else might have moved ahead of them, noting that the Juhi Escort Agency had sought help from multiple places. Jiang replied that it was hard to say but concluded that they should hurry. Meanwhile, at the Golden Tiger bandit camp, No Jiam launched an attack at Jian, but it was easily dodged. He followed up with multiple energy slashes, yet Jian evaded them effortlessly. Frustrated, No Jiam demanded to know if Jian intended to keep dodging. Jian calmly questioned whether he was truly that resentful. Confused, No Jiam failed to understand, prompting Jian to clarify that he was asking if he resented the destruction of his stronghold. No Jiam admitted his resentment openly, declaring that the stronghold he had spent his life building had been destroyed and swearing revenge against Jian's clan and village. Jian challenged him, pointing out that the place had been built through exploitation, kidnapping, and suffering, questioning what there was to be attached to. No Jiam dismissed it as the nature of bandits, and questioned why it mattered to Jian. In response, Jian struck him with a powerful punch, knocking him to the ground and breaking his teeth. He then revealed that 12 years earlier, he had been captured on an escort route of the Yunsang Escort Agency, and sold to the demonic cult like livestock. As he spoke, Jian crushed No Jiam's leg underfoot, causing him to scream. He continued, recounting how he had been treated worse than an animal, barely surviving countless near-death experiences before escaping, only to find his family struggling and his mother eventually dying without him present. He then broke No Jiam's arm and kicked him into a wooden pillar, declaring that he had not even been able to be at his mother's deathbed. No Jiam, now defeated, admitted he had never imagined one of his victims would return for revenge. Jian pressed further, accusing him of kidnapping his brother as well and questioning how it could not concern him. Terrified, No Jiam begged for mercy, but Jian refused, declaring that he would make him beg for death and reveal the prisoner's location first. He then channeled his inner energy and began torturing him, causing No Jiam to scream in agony. At that moment, Jiang arrived and ordered Jian to stop, but Jian continued. Chiao Wu noticed the newcomer and questioned who he was. Jian instead asked Chiao Wu to handle him, which he accepted. Jiang, seeing that Jian would not stop, rushed forward and repeated his command. Chiao Wu challenged him to make him stop and launched an inner energy attack. Despite multiple attempts, Jiang struggled to deflect it, and barely managed to evade. Realizing the gap in strength, he acknowledged that even without using his full power, his sword chi had been brushed aside easily. Chiao Wu praised his evasion and pointed out Elder Peng lying nearby, suggesting that Namgung Jiang looked more interesting. Recognizing Peng Yosang, Jiang understood the seriousness of the situation and prepared himself, taking the stance of the Azure Sky One Chi art. Chiao Wu, amused, acknowledged his strength and declared he would go all out. Jiang attacked using the Blue Cloud 12 Swords technique. Their first clash cancelled out, but the exchange quickly escalated. Chiao Wu pressed forward with successive strikes, forcing Jiang into a counterattack. During the clash, Jiang coughed up blood and realized he had failed to inflict significant damage. Meanwhile, Chiu Wu wiped a small amount of blood from his neck, remarking that it had been a while since he had been injured. The Namgung clan members were stunned, noting that such a powerful technique had only left a scratch. Min immediately ordered the others to protect their elder, and they prepared to attack as a group. Chiu Wu mocked them, stating that numbers meant nothing without skill. Before the situation escalated further, Jiang ordered his clan to stand down, refusing to let their honor be stained by a group attack. Chiu Wu approved of the decision. At that moment, Jian approached from behind, dragging No GM, and told Chiu Wu to wait. Noticing Jian's altered appearance, Chiu Wu was surprised and questioned him. Jian, having changed his face as a disguise, approached the group and addressed them, confirming whether they were from the Namgung clan. Seeing that Chiu Wu stopped at Jian's words, Jian was inwardly astonished, realizing that someone of such caliber could be halted with a single command. He stepped forward and formally introduced himself as Jian. Jian acknowledged him politely, and asked what had brought the Namgung clan to that place, casually dropping No GM's body before them. Upon seeing the body, Jiang asked if it was the leader of the Golden Tiger Bandit stronghold. Jian confirmed that it was. Jiang explained that they had come to avenge the Yomwa Escort Bureau and to rescue the families of the Juhi Escort Bureau, then questioned Jian's identity and purpose. Jian replied that they had also targeted No GM, not out of personal vengeance, but due to numerous requests, favors, from various parties. Hearing this, Jiang wondered if they were troubleshooters, yet found it difficult to believe, given their overwhelming strength. Jian then placed his foot on No GM's back, remarking that his crimes involving escort bureaus must have been severe to draw so many pleas for help. Alarmed, Jiang urged him to stop, but Jian ignored him and broke No GM's neck, declaring that he had merely fulfilled the request to make him pay with his life. Jiang questioned his actions, but Jian calmly stated that he had simply delivered retribution. Although Jiang did not dispute the justice of it, he pointed out that Jian should have first confirmed the location of the prisoners, noting that all the bandits appeared to have been wiped out. Jian reassured him, explaining that No GM had mentioned prisoners while begging for his life and had revealed the location of a hidden underground chamber. Following the directions, the Namgung clan later discovered the secret room. When they opened it, the prisoners cried out in relief, realizing they had been saved. At the entrance, Jiang expressed his gratitude to Jian, acknowledging that his information had been accurate. Jian, however, downplayed his role, stating that with the Namgung clan present, the rescue would have succeeded regardless, and announced that he and Chiu Wu would take their leave. Jiang suggested they meet the people they had saved, but Jian declined, explaining that they had not come for recognition and that their involvement had merely been coincidental. With that, he bid farewell. Jian and Chiu Wu then departed. Afterward, Min asked Namgung Jiang who the two men might be. Jiang admitted he had no idea, stating that he had never encountered such individuals within the Murim world. Min speculated that they might be troubleshooters, but Jiang dismissed the notion, insisting that their martial prowess far exceeded that of ordinary mercenaries. Min then expressed his astonishment at how Chiu Wu had remained unharmed even after taking a direct strike. Jiang agreed, suggesting that he might have achieved the legendary diamond indestructible body, or an equivalent level of external mastery. He added that it was unfortunate he had not been able to see the duel through to its conclusion. Meanwhile, in the forest, Jian and Chiu Wu were on their way back home. Chiu Wu questioned the reason behind Jian's earlier actions. When Jian asked for clarification, he explained that he meant the sudden change in appearance. Jian revealed that he had disguised himself simply to avoid unnecessary complications, explaining that it would be troublesome if word spread that ordinary butchers had destroyed a bandit stronghold and clashed with a Namgung master. Chiu Wu acknowledged that such attention would indeed be bothersome, and Jian added that it could also expose their past, which was best kept hidden. Chiu Wu pointed out that changing only one of their appearances seemed pointless, but Jian replied that it was the best he could do under the circumstances, even if it only reduced the risk slightly. Chiu Wu praised the disguise as convincing despite being done hastily. Jian agreed and suggested they return quickly to prepare for Haiyan's arrival. Later, as they prepared a meal, Haiyan returned home. Jian immediately embraced him, relieved to see him safe. Hyan apologized for causing worry, but Jian reassured him that he had trusted in his safe return, having heard that the Namgung clan had gone to rescue him. Hyan clarified that while the Namgung clan had helped, they were not the ones who had actually saved him. Instead, the bandits had been defeated by someone else. His words caused a moment of silence. He glanced suspiciously at both Jian and Chiao Wu, while Chiao Wu feigned ignorance. Hyan continued eating, then casually asked if he should now learn to work at the butcher shop. Guangho eagerly volunteered to teach him, recalling his own hardships under Chiao Wu, but before he could continue, Chiao Wu grabbed him by the ear and scolded him for not even managing his own duties properly. Dragging him outside, Chiao Wu declared that he would first inspect how Guangho had handled the shop in their absence. Watching this, Hyan nervously asked if he would end up the same way, but Jian reassured him that there was no need, as he and Chiao Wu were sufficient for the actual work. Instead, Hyan would take on the role of the shop's owner, which he readily accepted. The scene then shifted to the Yongo clan. Inside a room, a guard announced the arrival of Lord Zhuaigong. Yongo Yung ordered that he be let in. Upon entering, Zhuaigong confirmed that he had verified the matter. Yongo Yung demanded to know what had happened in Shaoxing. Zhuaigong reported that the Black Cow Squad had been completely annihilated. Shocked, Yongo Yung questioned whether the Living Immortal Medical House was responsible. However, Zhuaigong dismissed this possibility, explaining that there had been no signs of a struggle involving them. Yongo Yung agreed, stating that he had not raised such weak subordinates, and began to speculate about other possibilities, including Sama Jian. However, Zhuaigong revealed that the investigation pointed instead to a man running a butcher shop. This baffled Yongo Yung, who questioned how a mere butcher could have obtained something as valuable as azure pure stone oil. Frustrated, he demanded answers, but Zhuaigong admitted that aside from the involvement of a third party, they had no concrete information. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Yongo Yung ordered that someone be sent to the Dead Blood Forest to uncover the truth and bring back the culprit's head. He then added another order, expressing his anger over losing the azure pure stone oil, and demanded that the butcher responsible also be hunted down and killed. The scene shifted to the butcher shop, where Hyan was cutting meat. He wiped the sweat from his brow and muttered that the work was exhausting. At that moment, Chiao Wu handed him a drink, which he accepted gratefully. After examining the cuts, Chiao Wu praised his work, remarking that while people often said a younger brother could not match his elder, Hyan was already better than a certain slacker. Hyan dismissed the praise, admitting that his skills were still poor and that he now understood why he had never been allowed to handle a blade before. Jian approached and clarified that it had not been about lack of trust, but simply because he and Chiao Wu were sufficient for the work. However, seeing Hyan's progress now, he admitted that the decision had turned out well. Hyan then asked what should be done with the prepared cuts. Chiao Wu asked for the knife so he could trim them further, but also wondered aloud where Guangho had gone, noting that he had barely been coming home lately. Hyan mentioned that whenever he tried to ask, Guangho avoided giving clear answers, suspecting that something was going on with the United Will Society. Jian asked about the situation, and Hyan explained that although the Blood Axe clan and the United Will Society had always been at odds, their clashes had become unusually frequent. Chiao Wu suggested that they might need to force Guangho to quit, even if it meant beating him into it. At that moment, their sister Gina arrived and bluntly agreed, saying that if necessary, they should break his legs to make him leave the gang. Jian reminded her that she had gone out to buy a book, while Chiao Wu questioned whether she ever tired of reading all day and night, suggesting she should move around more now that she had recovered her health. Gina, however, insisted that something more important had happened and urgently asked what they were going to do. When Jian asked what had occurred, she explained through tears that there had been a knife fight near the bookstore, with people injured and blood spilled. Jian comforted her, and she anxiously asked what would happen if Guangho got hurt. Jian reassured her that they would go and check, instructing her to return home for now. He asked Hyan to take care of her. Hyan agreed, guiding Gina away while expressing confidence that everything would be fine. Before leaving, he told Jian he was counting on him. As the two departed, Chiao Wu asked if Jian was going. Jian replied that there was always a possibility, echoing the youngest's concern. Chiao Wu remarked with a chuckle that at this rate, the United Will Society might disappear entirely. The scene then shifted to the United Will Society headquarters, where members lay defeated throughout the building. Their leader, bleeding and exhausted, struggled to remain standing as two attackers advanced toward him. He accused them of not being from the Blood Axe clan, to which one of the attackers mockingly replied that at least he was not completely blind. The leader demanded to know their purpose, and the second attacker explained that the United Will Society needed to disappear for the Blood Axe clan to take over Shaoxing's night streets. Enraged, the leader launched a sword thrust, but to his shock, the attacker stopped the blade effortlessly with 2 fingers. Before he could react further, the attacker kicked him, sending him crashing through a wall. As he fell, Chiyo Wu suddenly appeared and caught him. Confused, Chiyo Wu questioned the situation while the attackers noticed his presence. He identified the injured man as the leader who had been with Guangho earlier and asked if the attackers were responsible. One of them demanded to know who they were, but Chiyo Wu dismissed the question and instead noted that no one else seemed to be present. Jian confirmed that the place was empty. Chiyo Wu set the injured leader down, observing that the United Will Society was effectively finished. He commented on the attacker's skill, initially assuming they were from the Blood Axe clan. However, Jian examined the fallen members and concluded otherwise, noting the precision of the attacks and the absence of wasted movements, something far beyond ordinary street fighters. Approaching the attackers, they demanded to know what had happened and where the remaining members of the United Will Society had gone. The attackers hesitated, recognizing the danger before them. Chiyo Wu warned them that silence would be taken as a wish for death. Under pressure, one of them revealed that the survivors had gone east, to the Guandi Shrine. Jian asked why, and the man explained that it was one of the Blood Axe clan's hideouts, and that they had gone to strike it. Chiyo Wu remarked that it had been a setup, intended to eliminate the weaker forces before targeting the leader. Realizing the implications, he wondered if Guangho might also be there and asked if there were others of similar strength at that location. The man replied that in Shaoxing, there were only the 2 of them. The other attacker attempted to stop him from speaking further, but before he could continue, Chiyo Wu struck him, killing him instantly. With a cold grin, Chiyo Wu urged Jian to continue. Jian then questioned the remaining attacker, pointing out that his actions did not seem like simple employment under the Blood Axe clan. Terrified, the man confessed that they had used the Blood Axe clan as a front, destroyed the United Will Society, and intended to take over Shaoxing's underworld. He further revealed that they had come from Hangzhou. Jian deduced that they might be connected to the Heavenly Killing Gang, but the man explained that they had already eliminated its remnants and taken control of the area. Pressed further, he revealed that they were backed by Nanjing's Flying Dagger Society. After hearing enough, Chiyo Wu killed him as well. Turning to Jian, he confirmed that they would head to the Guandi Shrine. Jian agreed, and they set off immediately. As they moved, Chiyo Wu remarked that expanding from Hangzhou to Shaoxing suggested something larger was unfolding. Jian, sensing the danger, stated that the situation was worsening and that he needed to bring Guangho back quickly. At that moment, a voice called out to them. It was Guangho. Jian immediately rushed forward and caught him before he collapsed, his expression darkening as he realized something was wrong. Some time later, after being treated by a doctor, Guangho regained consciousness and let out a scream. Hearing the noise, Jian hurried into the room with a worried expression. The moment Guangho saw him, he weakly greeted his older brother, but Jian fell silent after seeing the extent of his injuries. Before Guangho could finish asking why he looked that way, Chiyo Wu suddenly punched him on the head and berated him for getting beaten up so pathetically. Guangho protested that he had not wanted to lose and explained that the Blood Axe sect had brought in outside help. He insisted that things would have been fine as long as the association head remained alive. Chiyo Wu bluntly informed him that the association head was dead. Hearing those words, Guangho's face darkened in shock. The next day, Guangho entered the butcher's shop with a gloomy expression. Chiyo Wu, who was busy cutting meat, casually greeted him and asked if he was finally back. Guangho immediately asked where Jian was, and Chiyo Wu explained that Jian was at the slaughterhouse handling a massive order that had come in during the night. When Guangho asked about the order, Chiyo Wu chuckled and proudly explained that it was the first truly large order they had received since opening the shop, 3 cows and 10 pigs. Guangho quietly acknowledged it, but Chiyo Wu then placed his cleaver down and revealed something even more surprising. The order had come from the Blood Axe sect. Guang Ho was stunned and angrily questioned how they could possibly accept work from those people. Chiu Wu sighed and reminded him that medicine cost money, adding that if Guang Ho insisted on causing trouble, he should at least avoid getting injured. At that moment, someone pinched Chiu Wu from behind, causing him to cry out in pain. It was Gina, glaring at him in annoyance. She scolded him for teasing Guang Ho when he was already feeling miserable. Then she turned toward Guang Ho and asked if he was still upset because of someone named Brother Chion. Guang Ho was shocked that she knew about him, but Gina casually explained that he talked in his sleep every night. When Guang Ho asked if he really did that, she confirmed it, and mentioned that Chion was the one who had helped him escape. Guang Ho fell silent as memories resurfaced. He recalled the fierce battle at the Concordant Mind Association, where Chion and the other members had fought desperately against their enemies. In the middle of the chaos, Chion had shouted at him to run. Moments later, a sword pierced through Chion's chest. Remembering the scene, Guang Ho broke down in tears and admitted that Chion had always looked after him ever since he joined the Concordant Mind Association. At that moment, Jian arrived and overheard everything. Calmly, he asked Guang Ho what he wanted him to do about it, and even offered revenge if that was what he desired. Chiu Wu reacted with excitement, surprised by Jian's willingness. Guang Ho hesitated. Deep down, he believed his brothers might actually be capable of carrying it out. They had once been prepared to gather men and launch a rescue mission when their second brother had been kidnapped. However, the members of the Flying Dagger Association were monsters who had destroyed an entire association head and his guards with only 2 people. More than anything, Guang Ho did not want his brothers to stain their hands with blood again after finally escaping their brutal lives as mercenaries. After wrestling with those thoughts, Guang Ho quietly said it was fine and that everything was already over. Jian asked if he was truly certain, and Guang Ho confirmed it. Jian then patted him on the shoulder and told him to use this opportunity to leave the Concordant Mind Association behind and abandon such dangerous work for good. Unsure of his future, Guang Ho asked what he was supposed to do now. Jian suggested that since Guang Ho disliked working in the butcher shop, he could instead run a ranch. Confused, Guang Ho asked where the idea had come from. Jian explained that old man John, the man who supplied their meat, was planning to sell his ranch because he had grown tired of the work after spending his entire life doing it. Chiu Wu found the news strange since the old man had looked perfectly healthy recently. Jian explained that the man simply wanted to retire, and he himself was considering taking over the ranch. When Guang Ho asked how they could possibly afford it, Jian replied that old man John was willing to offer a good price. Between their savings and the payment from the new order, they would barely have enough money. After thinking it over, Guang Ho admitted to himself that the butcher shop never suited him anyway. In the end, he agreed to do it, earning an approving response from Jian. Just then, Haiyan arrived at the shop accompanied by Chion. The sight of Chion alive left Guang Ho completely stunned. Chion casually remarked that he had heard Guang Ho was injured and had worried about him, though he now looked perfectly fine. Guang Ho, still in disbelief, asked why he was there. Haiyan smacked Guang Ho on the head and scolded him for causing such a commotion over someone who was alive and healthy. He admitted that he had been worried Guang Ho might do something reckless because of the misunderstanding. Chiu Wu curiously asked if this was the brother Chion Guang Ho had been talking about. Haiyan confirmed it and mocked Guang Ho for moping around without even understanding the situation properly. Chiu Wu ground his teeth in irritation and glared angrily at Guang Ho. Meanwhile, Gina stormed over with a mop, calling Guang Ho an idiot before chasing him around the shop. Elsewhere, at the Flying Dagger Association headquarters, the corpses of the 2 men killed earlier by Chiu Wu at the Concordant Mind Association were delivered for inspection. Yan Ho Chung, the head of the Flying Dagger Association, examined the bodies and observed that both men had been killed in a single blow. Beside him, Hidden Dragon Unit leader Zhao Riyong confirmed that their skulls had been completely crushed. Ho Chung remarked that the victims had been among the finest members of the Yongo clan's Hidden Dragon Unit. Meanwhile, Zhao Riyong carefully studied the corpses and noted internally that their ribcages had shattered like dry twigs while their organs had burst from the overwhelming impact. He questioned whether an expert of such terrifying strength truly existed in Sohung. He eventually concluded that both deaths had been caused by a single strike to the head. Ho Chung commented that even within the Hidden Dragon Unit, those 2 men had been exceptional. The existence of someone capable of killing them so effortlessly was difficult to believe. Jia Ryong ordered a discreet investigation into the surrounding area to determine whether the incident had merely been chance or part of something much larger. When Ho Chung asked if he suspected anything, Jia Ryong brought up the Black Crow unit, and remarked that the reports of its destruction appeared to have been true after all. Ho Chung realized that the person responsible for wiping out the Black Crow unit was likely the same individual who had killed these men. Jia Ryong agreed that the possibility was extremely high. Glancing back at the subordinates prepared to act on his orders, Jia Ryong instructed Ho Chung to tell everyone to stand by. Until they identified the culprit, all outside operations were to be suspended. Ho Chung respectfully acknowledged the order. The sun hung high in the sky as Chio Wu entered the butcher shop complaining about the unbearable heat outside. Seeing him drenched in sweat, Jian handed him a cup of ice water and told him to drink it. Chio Wu stared at the cup in surprise and excitedly questioned how Jian had managed to get ice in such weather. Jian explained that he had taken a block from the cellar because even the water stored in jars had become unbearably hot. After drinking deeply, Chio Wu praised the decision but wondered whether Haiyan would scold Jian for using the ice. Jian casually replied that Haiyan was away collecting a payment from the Blood Axe sect. Moments later, Haiyan returned to the shop. Chio Wu greeted him warmly at first, but his expression froze the moment he noticed the swollen bruise around Haiyan's eye. Jian immediately wrapped some ice in cloth and pressed it gently against the injury. Even while injured, Haiyan complained about Jian taking ice from the cellar again and worried they would run out before winter arrived. Jian ignored the complaint and demanded to know what had happened to his eye. Haiyan brushed it off as nothing, but Chio Wu immediately guessed that the Blood Axe sect was responsible. Haiyan denied it, though Chio Wu refused to believe him. Furious, he declared that he would kill those bastards. Jian quickly told him to lower his voice before turning back to Haiyan and ordering him to explain everything properly. Haiyan finally admitted that the Blood Axe sect had refused to pay the remaining balance. When he insisted on collecting the rest, they had beaten him up. Chio Wu gritted his teeth, saying he had known it all along. Jian calmly asked how much money Haiyan had managed to collect. Haiyan placed the bag on the table and admitted it was only about half the amount owed. Jian remarked that at least it was not a complete loss, but Haiyan bitterly pointed out how much time they had wasted dealing with those people. Unable to contain his anger, Chio Wu started toward the door and insisted on getting their money back personally. Jian stopped him and asked exactly what he intended to do. Chio Wu bluntly answered that he intended to collect what they were owed. Jian glanced at Haiyan's confused expression before secretly using sound transmission to speak directly to Chio Wu. He reminded him that the Blood Axe sect was backed by the Flying Dagger Association. Chio Wu dismissed them as insignificant, but Jian warned him that the men they had encountered at the Concordant Mind Association were far beyond the level of ordinary Flying Dagger Association fighters. Someone even more powerful was supporting them from the shadows, and if those people became involved, things would grow dangerous. Chio Wu argued that they could simply kill anyone who came after them, but Jian countered that more enemies would continue appearing endlessly. After some thought, Chio Wu reluctantly admitted Jian had a point. Since he could not hear the sound transmission, Haiyan asked what the two of them were discussing. Chio Wu casually brushed the question aside. Jian eventually decided that the loss was manageable, and suggested they simply treat the situation like being bitten by a stray dog. Chio Wu angrily muttered that a mad dog only understood a beating with a club. Trying to calm the atmosphere, Jian suggested grabbing alcohol from the cellar and drinking together. Chio Wu reluctantly agreed to let things go for now, though he asked what they would do if the Blood Axe sect tried the same thing again. Jian calmly replied that if it happened again, they would indeed have to pick up the club. At that very moment, the front door of the butcher's shop was violently kicked open. A group of men entered, and their leader smugly announced that it had taken some effort to find the place. Haiyan immediately recognized them as members of the Blood Axe sect. Chio Wu narrowed his eyes and asked whether they had followed Haiyan back to the shop. The realization shocked Haiyan. Jian immediately ushered Haiyan inside and told him to stay out of the way while they handled the situation. Meanwhile, Chio Wu smiled at the intruders and casually asked what had brought them there. The leader explained that since they had recently collected payment money, it was now time to pay their taxes. Chiyo Wu questioned what taxes they were talking about, pointing out that they already paid enough. The man clarified that he did not mean government taxes, but theirs. Realizing the situation, Chiyo Wu bluntly accused them of extortion. The leader arrogantly claimed that the butcher's shop only operated safely because the Blood Axe sect protected it. According to him, such protection required effort, so the shop owners should pay fairly for the arrangement. He described it as a mutually beneficial partnership. Chiyo Wu mocked the long explanation and told him to simply call it protection money. The man agreed and declared that they were finally speaking the same language. Chiyo Wu then stepped forward and coldly remarked that he did not remember ever asking for protection. As he released his overwhelming aura, he asked the men to look carefully and decide whether he seemed like someone who needed protection from anyone. The leader immediately became nervous. Deep inside, he could not understand how a mere butcher could possess such terrifying pressure. Chiyo Wu sneered at them as pathetic scumbags before casually grabbing a slab of meat hanging nearby and hurling it straight at the leader. The sheer force behind the throw blasted the leader and his subordinates out through the front door. Stepping outside afterward, Chiyo Wu shouted that if they ever returned, he would wring every last one of their necks. Terrified, the gang members fled without looking back. Watching them run away, Chiyo Wu burst into laughter. Jian asked whether he had enjoyed himself. Chiyo Wu admitted that the sheer stupidity of beggars demanding protection money had been too amusing to ignore. He explained that he had actually held back because of the younger members of the household, and claimed he had merely sent the intruders away with some kind words. Jian dryly pointed out that throwing them through the front door hardly counted as kindness. Chiyo Wu simply argued that they had still walked away alive. Afterward, Chiyo Wu asked how Haiyan was doing. Jian explained that Haiyan still had not calmed down and had never expected the Blood Axe sect to come directly to their home. According to him, the gang had become increasingly bold lately. Chiyo Wu asked if Jian was really willing to let things continue like this when trouble was already reaching their doorstep. Jian narrowed his eyes and thought silently for a moment before finally deciding that enough was enough. Calmly, he announced that it was time to pick up the club. The statement caught Chiyo Wu completely off guard. Later that night, the scene shifted to the Blood Axe sect headquarters. Chiyo Wu observed the martial artists guarding the entrance, and mocked them for trying to imitate a real martial arts sect. Without alerting the guards, he and Jian slipped inside unnoticed. As they moved through the compound, Chiyo Wu quietly asked what the plan was. Jian replied that they would keep things quiet, finish quickly, and leave. Chiyo Wu chuckled and remarked that it was a perfect night for work. Jian agreed, noting how the moonlight illuminated everything clearly. Spotting their destination ahead, he told Chiyo Wu to make it quick as the two continued deeper into the sect grounds. They spotted 3 guards standing outside the building's entrance. Before the guards could react, 3 stones flew through the air and struck them in the head, knocking them unconscious instantly. Seeing this, Jian calmly told Chiyo Wu to move them away just in case. Chiyo Wu picked up the unconscious guards and dragged them aside. As he returned, he remarked that the heavy security confirmed this was definitely the right place. He also found it strange that after so many people had died there a few days earlier, these men did not seem frightened at all. Jian replied that anyone who cared about such things would never have taken over this place to begin with. Chiyo Wu then approached the wall and casually threw the unconscious guards outside before quickly returning. Jian told him it was time to go in, and the two headed inside. A short while later, they arrived at a bedroom where a middle-aged man was sleeping loudly between 2 young women. Seeing the scene, Chiyo Wu's expression darkened as he muttered that the man was living like a prince. Jian immediately raised his hand and infused it with aura before directing it toward the 2 women, sending them into a deep sleep. Afterward, he told Chiyo Wu to wake the man up. Without hesitation, Chiyo Wu kicked the sleeping man directly in the groin. The man jolted awake with a scream of agony. Chiyo Wu grabbed him by the hair and hurled him off the bed onto the floor. Watching this, Jian commented that even if Chiyo Wu was jealous, that had gone a little too far. Chiyo Wu casually claimed it had been an accident. Groaning in pain, the man shouted for his guards and demanded to know where they were. Jian stepped closer and informed him that it was useless since no sound from the room would escape outside. He then asked if the man was the leader of the Blood Axe gang. The man remained silent. Chio Wu picked up a bottle of alcohol from a nearby table and took a drink before warning the man to answer before he made sure he could never speak again. Terrified, the man immediately bowed his head and admitted that he was indeed the gang's leader. Jian nodded and stated that they had found the right place. He then asked if the leader knew why they had come. The leader nervously admitted that he did not. Chio Wu suddenly hurled a glass toward him while sarcastically congratulating him. Just before the glass struck the leader's head, Jian used his aura to shatter it into tiny fragments. Jian told Chio Wu to stop fooling around. Witnessing the display, the leader trembled in fear as he realized the two men were martial masters. Jian then calmly explained that he had no interest in the Blood Axe Gang or the Righteous Heart Association and had no desire to take the leader's position. He only wanted to live quietly and peacefully like everyone else, but troublesome things kept getting in his way. The leader quickly promised that if Jian simply gave the order, he would take care of everything immediately. Jian replied that he would trust him, then casually brought up the protection money the gang had recently been collecting throughout the market. The leader admitted that it was true. Jian told him he was not demanding that they stop entirely, but they should at least keep things reasonable. If they only collected the same amount that the Righteous Heart Association used to take, there would be no problems. The leader hesitated. Seeing this, Chio Wu asked whether it was too difficult and offered to make things easier for him. The threat immediately made the leader nervous. He explained that although he wanted to agree, it was not something he could decide on his own. Chio Wu grabbed him by the head and demanded to know what nonsense he was talking about since he was supposedly the boss. The leader hurriedly explained that although he was the boss, he could not make every decision himself. Jian immediately understood and stated that it was because of the Flying Dagger Society. Chio Wu recalled the group from before and mentioned that suspicious-looking men had recently been wandering around the market. The leader was shocked that they even knew about the hidden dragging unit. Jian asked whether the Flying Dagger Society members were still around. The leader explained that they had already withdrawn, but the Blood Axe Gang still had to send them money every month. Jian simply told him to reduce the amount. The leader stared at him in confusion. Jian clarified that he meant the gang's share. Even after lowering it, they would still have more than enough money to survive. The leader hesitated once again. Chio Wu tightened his grip on the man's head and warned him that if he disliked the arrangement, they could always replace him with someone else. Panicking, the leader immediately agreed to follow Jian's instructions. Chio Wu finally released him and praised him for making the smart choice, adding that if he had tried anything clever, he really would have smashed his head against the floor. Chio Wu then remembered the unpaid debt, and reminded Jian that they still needed to collect the overdue tab. Jian turned to the leader and asked about the large feast the gang had recently held, mentioning how much meat they must have consumed. The leader reluctantly admitted it. Jian pointed out that after stuffing themselves like that, they should at least pay properly instead of trying to avoid the bill. The leader remained silent. Jian walked over to the wall and carefully observed the room. After a moment, he pointed toward a painting and remarked that it was probably there. Chio Wu approached the painting and casually declared that they could simply check. With a single punch, he destroyed both the painting and the wall behind it. The leader nervously gritted his teeth. Behind the shattered wall was a hidden room filled with money. Seeing the stash, Chio Wu called the leader insane and questioned why he had raised protection fees despite already having such wealth. Jian told him to leave the rest alone since they only intended to take what belonged to them. He collected 3 bags of money and tossed them onto the floor, stating that it was payment for the meat. The leader nearly choked in disbelief at the ridiculous excuse. Jian then threw down several more bags and calmly added that the rest was interest for the delayed payment. Meanwhile, the leader could only grind his teeth helplessly as his fortune disappeared. Chio Wu stuffed the bags into a larger sack and jokingly suggested charging medical expenses as well since it was unfair to get beaten up while collecting money. Jian agreed and picked up a box filled with expensive valuables like gold chains before handing it to Chio Wu, saying it would cover the hospital bill. The leader noticed that there were still 2 large boxes and another bag of money left on the shelf and tried to reassure himself that enough remained. At that moment, Chio Wu suddenly grabbed him by the collar and hurled him into the shelf. The impact sent him crashing to the floor. Smiling, Chio Wu declared that they now needed to factor in the cost of his life as well. Terrified, the leader scrambled toward the remaining bag of money and offered it up immediately. Chio Wu casually cleaned his ear with a finger and told him to do whatever he thought was necessary, adding that if it was still not enough, they could always start chopping off arms and legs. Shocked by the threat, the leader quickly surrendered the remaining bag and both large boxes. Chio Wu tied the massive sack shut and lifted it effortlessly while laughing that the leader might actually amount to something since he at least understood the value of his own life. Jian stated that since they had taken everything they needed, it was time to leave. The leader stared blankly at the completely empty shelves in shock. Before leaving, Jian used sound transmission directly into the leader's mind and warned him to keep his mouth shut if he wanted to stay alive. If he ever spoke about what had happened that night, he would die. To emphasize the warning, Jian flicked a leaf infused with aura. The leaf pierced straight through the wall in front of the trembling leader. Chio Wu added that they had treated him kindly enough already, so they should not have to deal with him again. He warned that if the gang caused trouble again, they would simply replace them with someone else. Jian agreed, remarking that things should remain peaceful for a while now. The scene then shifted to the Tongchen demonic cult's Machian pavilion. A man suddenly crashed through the doors after being struck by someone powerful enough to smash both the doors and the man himself into the hall. The injured figure was none other than Lord Hakan. A young man named Guan calmly stepped inside and remarked that if they had simply stepped aside peacefully, things would not have become so awkward. He then greeted his uncle, saying it had been a long time. Sitting silently upon the throne was his uncle, Guan Hyo, the instructor of the heaven-reaching demonic cult. Guan observed that even Lord Hakan had been defeated so easily, exactly as he had expected. At that moment, Guan Pei, one of Guan Hyo's loyal guards, stepped forward and furiously demanded to know whether Guan understood where he was and what he had done. Guan merely replied that Guan Pei had never been good at reading the atmosphere. Enraged, Guan Pei demanded to know what he meant. Guan calmly explained that this was not the time for shouting and glaring but the time to fear for one's life. With a furious roar, Guan Pei unsheathed his sword and charged forward while insulting Guan as a rootless wretch. Before he could even reach his target, a sword pierced straight through his stomach. Guan Pei collapsed to the floor in agony. Guan coldly remarked that calling him rootless was excessive since the divine demon clan rightfully belonged to him as the son of the late cult leader, not to his uncle who had occupied the empty throne immediately after his father's death. Guan Hyo remained silent for a long moment before finally admitting that there was nothing he could say that would not sound like an excuse. Guan smiled faintly and said that was exactly what he liked about his uncle. Unlike the fool lying on the floor, Guan Hyo understood the situation. Guan Hyo then admitted that there was still one thing he wished to ask. Guan allowed him to speak freely. Guan Hyo stated that although he was old, he was not weak enough to fall so easily. He wanted to know why everyone had betrayed him. Guan glanced back at the subordinates standing behind him and calmly explained that the leaders of the loyal Demon Corps and the Front Demon Corps had already been his men for a long time. Furthermore, 1/3 of the Elders' Council had supported him from the beginning according to his father's plans. To subdue the remaining elders, they had merely borrowed assistance from someone Guan Hyo knew very well. At that moment, another figure entered the hall while dragging someone by the hair. The newcomer casually threw the injured man in front of Guan Hyo. The moment Guan Hyo saw the bloodied figure, he immediately recognized him as Cho Jiang and hurried to support him. Cho Jiang coughed up blood weakly. The mysterious newcomer coldly remarked that Cho Jiang was not dead yet, so there was no need to panic. He then removed his hood. The instant Guan Hyo saw his face, his eyes widened in shock as he recognized the Northern Heavenly Sword Demon. Unable to believe it, Guan Hyo demanded to know how he could possibly be there. The Northern Heavenly Sword Demon asked whether Guan Hyo truly believed everything would end so easily. He declared that Guan Hyo had never understood him at all. Then, with burning rage in his eyes, he shouted that he could not die until he repaid what he owed Sama Jian. Not even the King of Hell himself would be able to stop him. Guan unsheathed his sword and struck Guan Hyo down in a single motion. The cult leader's body collapsed lifelessly onto the ground. A smile spread across Guan face as he declared that with both the cult leader and the Council of Elders eliminated, taking complete control of the cult was now only a matter of time. At that moment, A man dressed in red rushed into the hall and knelt before him to deliver a report. The Northern Heavenly Sword Demon ordered the man to speak and asked whether the remaining resistance forces had been neutralized. The subordinate reported that most of them had been eliminated, but several individuals had escaped from the treasure vault carrying the sacred relics. They had also taken the Heavenly Demon Ring. Hearing this, Guan Ung's expression darkened in surprise as he demanded to know what had happened. The subordinate continued by explaining that they had managed to track the fugitives, but the one carrying the relics had separated from the main group during the escape. Guan Ung clenched his teeth in anger and declared that the heirloom of their founding ancestor, and the sword symbolizing the leader of the Tongshan demonic cult absolutely had to be recovered. Only by possessing them could he truly establish himself as the legitimate successor of the Heavenly Demon. He then demanded to know the thief's identity. The subordinate answered that it was No John of the Divine Demonic Unit. The moment Guan Ung heard the name, a faint smile appeared on his face. He wondered whether No John might actually be heading towards Sama Jian. Meanwhile, back at the butcher shop, a middle-aged man arrived and learned that Old Man So had passed away. Upon hearing the news, he immediately muttered that this would become troublesome. He then asked who was running the butcher shop now. Gina explained that her older brothers had taken over the business. The man nodded thoughtfully and remarked that this created quite a dilemma. As he turned to leave the shop while glancing back, he accidentally bumped into Chiao Wu. Startled, he immediately apologized to the large man. Chiao Wu chuckled and assured him that it was perfectly fine. Jian then approached and noticed the man leaving empty-handed. He apologized and explained that they currently did not have the specific cut of meat he was looking for. The man clarified that he had not come to buy meat. Jian asked why he had come then. Gina explained that the visitor was from the Hahu clan and had come to recruit a head butcher. Jian asked whether he had been searching for Old Man So, the previous owner. The man confirmed that he had. Every year around that time, the Hahu clan ordered Sohung liquor and invited Old Man So to help prepare for the clan's main family banquet. They had done so for over 20 years, so he had never imagined the old butcher would pass away. Jian realized that the banquet was for the great lord's 70th birthday celebration. The man looked surprised and asked how Jian knew that. Jian explained that before his death, Old Man So had left behind instructions. He had specifically mentioned that members of the Hahu clan would eventually visit and had asked Jian's group to assist them as best they could. The man reacted with visible surprise. Jian then told Chiao Wu to bring him the letter. After Chiao Wu handed it over, Jian passed it to the visitor, explaining that Old Man So had left it behind for anyone from the Hahu clan who came searching for him. The man read the letter aloud. In it, Old Man So stated that his personally chosen successors possessed skills equal to his own, and could be fully trusted with the work. After reading it, the man thought that if Old Man So himself vouched for them, then that was reassuring. Still, he warned Jian that the banquet held every year for the great lord's birthday was enormous, but this year's celebration would be on an entirely different scale. The amount of food and meat required would exceed imagination. He then asked whether they were truly confident. Jian calmly replied that they would do their absolute best. Although the phrase itself was ordinary, the man strangely found Jian reliable. He informed them that the banquet would begin on the upcoming full moon, and warned them not to arrive late. Several days before the great lord's birthday banquet, Jian and Chiao Wu arrived in Jinhua, Zhejiang province, at the Hahu clan estate. The moment Chiao Wu saw the place, he shouted in amazement that it looked less like a residence, and more like a massive fortress. Jian admitted that it was incredible. In all his life, he had never imagined a place larger than the Red Flame clan. While observing the guards at the entrance, Chiao Wu commented that even a mere gatekeeper radiated tremendous aura. The guard reminded him of someone else. Jian asked who he meant. Chiao Wu replied that the guard resembled No John. Jian looked closer and realized it was true. Their faces, physiques, and even the way they held their swords against their chests were almost identical. He remarked that he would have believed they were brothers. Chiao Wu laughed and admitted that he suddenly missed No John. It had always been entertaining putting him in his place whenever he tried acting tough. He then wondered how the rest of the group was doing before noticing the overwhelming number of people gathered there. Jian explained that Jinhua was already a major city, and with a banquet of this scale, merchants from all the surrounding regions had flocked there as well. Chiyo Wu questioned what kind of celebration lasted for 3 entire days, though he admitted there would at least be plenty to eat and watch. After hearing about the martial arts tournament, he jokingly suggested participating. Jian sighed and told him not to be ridiculous since he would probably turn the entire tournament grounds into a crime scene. Chiyo Wu grinned and promised to go easy on everyone. Jian immediately rejected the idea again, pointing out that someone of Chiyo Wu's size could not possibly hide his strength simply by going easy. Flustered, Chiyo Wu finally gave up and wandered over to a nearby stall to buy sugar candy. After popping the candy into his mouth, he happily chewed on it while Jian mocked him for acting like a child. At that moment, one of the gatekeepers stopped them and politely asked where they had come from and what business they had with the Hahu clan. Chiyo Wu immediately responded that if the guard was truly sorry, then he should not ask questions. Before he could continue, Jian quickly covered his mouth to stop him from speaking further. Jian politely explained that they were from Sohung and had been invited because a head butcher was needed for the banquet preparations. The gatekeeper narrowed his eyes while observing them carefully. He remembered hearing something from the vice steward about replacement butchers. Although the two looked more like bandits than workers, either seemed to possess martial arts training. Meanwhile, Jian loudly scolded Chiyo Wu again for his terrible temper. Chiyo Wu obediently apologized to his boss. Satisfied, the gatekeeper allowed them to enter. Some time later, preparations for the banquet were underway. A man dressed in red robes walked through the area complaining that he had originally planned to drink with that old geezer while grumbling together about the great lord forcing him to serve as a judge for the martial arts tournament. The man was Hahu Gok, one of the 3 martial eccentrics, known as the Sword Freak. Following behind him was his grandson, Hahu Yun. Yun tried to calm him down by saying that since Old Man so personally recommended the replacements, their skills were surely exceptional. Gok immediately snapped at him, asking whether he thought he was upset merely because of meat. Yun asked what else it could possibly be. Grinding his teeth, Gok shouted that his friend had died and demanded to know how he was supposed to feel at peace after that. Hearing this, Yun privately thought that although the two had spoken often, their enormous difference in status had never made them seem like true friends. Noticing Yun's silence, Gok asked whether the word friend sounded so strange to him. Yun honestly admitted that it did. He had never thought they had spent enough time together to form such a deep bond. Gok angrily replied that friendship was not measured by time but by heart. Even so, he pointed out that he had still known Old Man so for 20 years, long enough for the world itself to change twice over. Yun immediately pointed out that Gok had just claimed time was unimportant. Gok shouted at him to stop talking nonsense, and ordered him to follow. The two then entered the area where the banquet food was being prepared. A short while later, Gok spotted Jian calmly sitting beside a large buffalo that was eating grass from a wooden feeding box. Gok remarked that this was supposedly the man his old friend had recommended. He intended to personally see whether the butcher's skills truly matched the praise he had received. He recalled how Old Man so used to describe slaughtering as the final feast of life's journey. Jian calmly placed a pin against the buffalo's head and struck it once with a hammer, killing the massive beast instantly. Gok's eyes widened in surprise as he admitted that the man had clearly been trained properly. Yun agreed, calling the technique incredibly skilled. Gok corrected him by saying it went far beyond simple skill. Jian's movements had been so clean and precise that they were almost frightening. Moments later, Chiyo Wu casually lifted the entire buffalo by himself and dropped it into an enormous wooden drum before carrying the heavy container aside alone. Yun stared in disbelief at the monstrous display of strength. Gok remarked that Chiyo Wu possessed the strength to pluck mountains and an aura to cover the world. Yun argued that such a feat could not possibly be achieved through raw physical strength alone. Gok agreed that it was absolutely impossible. Suddenly, he gathered aura into his right hand and launched an attack directly toward Chiyo Wu. Seeing this, Yun immediately realized that it was the realm of spirit-breaking intent. He wondered whether the giant butcher would dodge or counterattack. Instead, Chiyo Wu simply punched forward without moving from his spot, instantly shattering the incoming aura attack. Yun's eyes widened in shock. He could hardly believe someone was facing the aura of one of the 3 martial eccentrics without even flinching. Gok laughed in amusement, and remarked that things had become interesting. Jian calmly told him to stop playing around because he would not be able to hold Xiao Wu back a second time. Gok smirked and asked whether that meant Jian had gone easy on him, and whether he should feel grateful for it. Jian replied that he was only concerned about the banquet preparations being delayed. Gok's eyes sharpened as he stated that it no longer mattered. The two were clearly no ordinary butchers. He then demanded to know who they really were. Xiao Wu grinned in frustration and stated that the old man had quite a mouth on him, questioning who he thought he was. Hearing that, Gok became surprised and explained that he had entered the world with his sword at 18, and by 50, his name had been carved into the annals of the Murim's top 100 experts. Since gaining the title of the Mad Sword, it was the first time in his life he had been treated with such disrespect. Xiao Wu replied that he did not care about titles like Mad Sword. After seeing Gok's earlier display, he believed he already understood his level and suggested they simply stay out of each other's way. Gok became nervous at those words and fell silent. Xiao Wu continued by saying that if Gok wanted to settle things immediately, he had no objections. Before the situation could escalate further, Jian quickly covered Xiao Wu's mouth with his hand and addressed Gok calmly. He explained that they were from the Hahu clan and had not come to cause trouble or pick a fight. They only wished to return to their work. Gok questioned whether that was really possible. He pointed out that some random butcher had blocked a strike he had poured his heart and soul into without even breaking a sweat. Suspicious, he demanded to know who they truly were and what they were doing there. Jian answered that they were merely butchers from Sohang. Their purpose was exactly as it appeared. They were there to prepare meat and earn a living. They wanted nothing more than to live quiet and ordinary lives and had only ended up there because of work. He then asked Gok to do them a favor and pretend he had never seen them. Gok asked what would happen if he refused. Jian calmly asked what it was that Gok wanted from them. Gok smiled and replied that there was only one thing a man who had spent his life with a blade desired. With that, he turned and told them to follow him. A little while later, Gok led them out of the clan grounds and into a nearby forest. After walking deeper into the woods, he picked up a wooden stick from the ground and announced that they should begin. Jian bent down, picked up a wooden stick of his own, and entered a fighting stance. Before the duel could begin, Xiao Wu grabbed Jian's hand and protested that this arrangement was not right. Confused, Jian asked what he meant. Xiao Wu explained that there was supposed to be a process for these matters. In his eyes, someone of Gok's level did not deserve to challenge the boss directly, and he could not simply stand aside and watch. Jian pointed out that among all the enemies they had faced, only a handful had ever reached Gok's level. Xiao Wu replied that he had handled most of those opponents himself anyway, while Jian had only stepped in against a few, including the North Heaven Sword Demon. Mentioning the old enemy caused him to remark that he still had unfinished business with him, and wondered if he remained as strong as before. Jian answered that a man like the North Heaven Sword Demon would not fall so easily and was likely hiding somewhere, waiting for the chance to reclaim his former glory. Xiao Wu chuckled and declared that he would personally send the man to hell one day. Since that was the case, he insisted on taking this old geezer for himself, saying he was finally starting to feel alive again. Jian sighed and questioned how their conversation had ended up like this. Stepping forward, Xiao Wu explained that fighting stronger opponents was the best way to sharpen one's edge. Lately, everything had begun to feel sluggish, as though he had lost his touch. Jian chuckled and told him to do whatever he wanted, though he doubted the old man had any interest in fighting him. Smiling confidently, Xiao Wu replied that he would make sure Gok became interested. He then called out to the old man and asked if he had heard everything. Gok gritted his teeth in frustration and admitted that he had expected something like this. However, he never imagined that in his old age he would be treated with such disrespect. To him, it was a tremendous insult. Raising 2 fingers and a thumb, Xiao Wu declared that Gok should not misunderstand. He was only willing to fight because the old man possessed some genuine skill. He then generously offered Gok a 3-hit head start, and told him to attack with everything he had. Gok coldly remarked that Xiao Wu was arrogant, though he would accept the generosity as a sign of respect toward the elderly. With that, Gok infused the wooden stick with his aura and activated his technique, Sky-Piercing Heavenly Flame. The moment Jian sensed the pressure radiating from the technique, he became serious. The overwhelming aura reminded him of the Jogyam clan. Meanwhile, Chiyo Wu smiled excitedly as he watched the aura gather around Gok's weapon and silently apologized to Jian. Gok suddenly rushed forward and attacked while thinking that Chiyo Wu had a lot of nerve to look down on him. The blazing aura exploded outward and struck Chiyo Wu directly, forcing him backward from the impact. Despite taking the attack head-on with his body, Chiyo Wu only grew more exhilarated and shouted for more. Gok stared in shock. He had poured nearly all his strength into that strike, yet the man before him remained standing. He could not help but wonder if Chiyo Wu's body was literally made of steel. Chiyo Wu commented that the attack had almost been dangerous for a moment, but it still fell far short of his expectations. If that was truly all Gok had, then he could only say he was disappointed. Gok became even more stunned as he realized that Chiyo Wu had mastered an outer art. However, he could not comprehend how such a thing was possible. Without another word, Gok shifted into a new stance. His aura raged like wildfire as he unleashed the technique known as Nine Dragons Slaying Sword, slaying dragon blood. Several violent aura blasts shot toward Chiyo Wu as Gok shouted that he wanted to see if his opponent could still endure this. In response, Chiyo Wu coated his fists in blue aura and activated the 16 Emperor's collapsing fists. His barrage of punches collided directly against the incoming aura blasts, creating a massive explosion of force. Immediately afterward, Chiyo Wu launched several aura attacks of his own toward Gok. Gok defended himself with a wooden stick, using his swordsmanship to block every strike. Without hesitation, Gok counterattacked once again with another variation of the slaying dragon technique. Seeing the incoming assault, Chiyo Wu entered a stance and unleashed a devastating fist strike that triggered an enormous explosion. When the dust finally settled, Chiyo Wu coughed up blood before grinning widely. He admitted that the old man was not bad at all and remarked that it had been a long time since he had last seen his own blood. Gok stared at him in disbelief. Even though he had been unable to unleash the full force of the final strike, he had still put everything he had into it. Yet the damage he managed to inflict was barely anything. He wondered if Chiyo Wu had already reached the pinnacle of the diamond body, though he reminded himself that even the strongest shield could eventually be broken. When Gok failed to respond, Chiyo Wu casually asked whether the old man was already giving up. Gok rejected the idea immediately and told Chiyo Wu to save his pity for someone else. He promised to show him just how fragile that supposedly powerful body truly was. Hearing that, Chiyo Wu became even more excited and declared that now they were finally getting serious. At that moment, Jian suddenly sensed something wrong and urgently warned Chiyo Wu to use the Asura's heavenly chi immediately. Chiyo Wu asked if the situation was truly that serious. Despite his doubt, he activated the Asura heavenly chi and unleashed a murderous strike toward Gok. At the same time, Gok prepared his own ultimate attack and launched it directly at Chiyo Wu. Watching the clash unfold, Jian became deeply alarmed. He recognized the technique as one designed for internal destruction and realized that if things continued like this, someone was going to die. Their attacks collided head-on, releasing a massive aura explosion that shook the surroundings and could be seen from far away. As the dust finally settled, both Gok and Chiyo Wu were left stunned when they saw Jian standing between them, blocking both attacks at the same time. Blood dripped from Jian's mouth as he coughed heavily. Seeing that, Chiyo Wu immediately became nervous and asked if he was all right. Jian wiped the blood from his lips and replied that he clearly did not look fine, though there was no need to worry because he would not die so easily. Despite the injury, he admitted that Chiyo Wu's skills had definitely become sharper. Chiyo Wu chuckled and explained that since Jian had been complaining about him becoming rusty, he had worked extra hard. Gok, both confused and irritated by the entire situation, demanded to know exactly what Jian had done. Jian calmly answered that the situation had become too dangerous, forcing him to intervene. Unable to understand his reasoning, Gok questioned why Jian would interfere simply because it was dangerous. In his view, every duel involved danger from the very beginning. Jian replied that a simple duel should have been enough to settle matters and questioned why they had to risk their lives over it. Gok stubbornly insisted that his match with Chiyo Wu was not over yet. However, Jian told him that the outcome had already become clear and that Gok himself understood that better than anyone. He pointed out that Gok had already seen enough of Chiyo Wu's abilities to satisfy his curiosity. After fighting to his heart's content, There was no reason to continue obsessing over victory. Hearing those words, Gok quietly repeated the phrase about obsessing over victory. Suddenly, old memories resurfaced in his mind. He recalled the clear skies on the day he had first left the clan carrying nothing but a single sword. Throughout his life, he had experienced not only glory but countless defeats and hardships as well. Now, after witnessing Jian casually intervene in a clash between himself and Chiao Wu, he realized the young man's martial arts had already reached a completely different realm. Even among experts of their caliber, such a feat should have been impossible. Gok then remembered Jian's earlier words about wanting nothing more than a quiet and ordinary life. Thinking back on that conversation, Gok found himself shaken. Despite possessing overwhelming strength, Jian still desired a peaceful life. Compared to someone like him, Gok felt strangely insignificant. The aura surrounding Gok suddenly faded away in Flusterian. Watching this, Chiao Wu loudly complained about what kind of nonsense this was. Before he could continue speaking, Jian immediately covered his mouth and ordered him to stay quiet. After taking a moment to calm himself, Gok looked toward Jian and admitted that he owed him one. Jian respectfully bowed and replied that it had been an honor. Meanwhile, Chiao Wu grumbled that despite doing all the hard work, someone else was receiving all the benefits. He reminded Gok not to forget what he had promised. Gok assured him that he would repay them tenfold, and then told them to stop wasting time so they could head back. With that, the three of them returned together. A little later, after arriving back at the clan grounds, Yun approached Gok and asked where he had gone. Gok noticed the gloomy expression on Yun's face and questioned what was bothering him. Yun complained that he had not even been able to finish watching Gok's duel before his father suddenly called him over and ordered him to participate in the upcoming martial arts tournament. Gok asked whether he meant the tournament being held for the celebration. Yun confirmed it with a frustrated nod. Gok casually suggested that he simply refuse, pointing out that Yun usually ignored his father's orders anyway, so there was no reason to sulk now. Yun explained that this time was different because the order had come directly from the very top. Surprised, Gok asked if he meant the great leader himself. Yun confirmed it, and admitted that although he had tried everything possible to refuse, it seemed impossible to escape this time. Gok stared at him in disbelief and questioned whether he truly had the courage to think about defying the great leader. Yun shamelessly explained that he had used Gok's name as an excuse, claiming that if they wanted him to participate, they would first need permission from his great-grandfather. Gok let out a deep sigh and muttered that the brat was truly unbelievable. Off to the side, Chiao Wu whispered to Jian that while the elder seemed slightly insane, the kid himself was also quite troublesome. Jian quietly agreed, admitting that Yun was an interesting brat and that his martial arts skills were not bad either. Meanwhile, Yun excitedly shifted the conversation and explained that since the tournament was being held for the great leader's 10th birthday celebration, the rewards were unbelievably valuable. Gok commented that gifts from all across the world were probably being gathered as tournament prizes. Usually, the grand prize would be a masterwork sword, though it appeared they had prepared something different this time. Yun explained that while a sword was still included, an additional special reward had also been added. Curious, Gok asked what the secondary reward was. Yun explained that earlier, while returning from meeting his father, he had seen the chief steward carrying a strange-looking plant. According to what he heard, it was meant to be the special prize for the tournament champion. Gok guessed that it was probably some kind of spirit herb. Yun admitted he was not entirely sure whether it was a spirit herb, though he remembered the strange name after thinking about it for a moment. Finally recalling it, he revealed that it was called the 1,000-year fire spirit herb. The moment Jian heard that name, his expression changed in surprise. Memories of the physician's earlier explanation immediately resurfaced in his mind. The 1,000-year fire spirit herb was considered the highest-grade spirit herb of its kind, an extraordinary treasure that was both priceless and nearly impossible to obtain. After hearing the explanation, Gok also became surprised and remarked that if it truly was the 1,000-year fire spirit herb, then it was a legendary elixir. At that moment, Jian suddenly stepped forward and respectfully asked Gok for a favor. Later that night, deep within one of the clan mansions, a young man presented a list of finalists to his father, explaining that it had been delivered by the vice hall master. His father, Ha Husung, accepted the list and began reading through the names. After seeing names such as Namgung Hak, Tang Chiu-yang, and aka Du, his expression darkened. Immediately closing the list, he angrily remarked that the other clans were clearly trying to ruin their tournament. His son, John, informed him that Yun was still refusing to participate. Sung sighed heavily, calling the situation a headache. At that moment, the doors suddenly opened and someone entered without permission. John instantly became furious and demanded to know who dared enter like that. However, before he could continue, Sung quickly stopped him, shocking him completely. The person who had entered was none other than Gok. Both father and son immediately bowed respectfully. Sung greeted Gok respectfully, noting that it had been a long time. John also greeted his great-grandfather politely. Gok brushed aside the formalities and ordered John to leave the room because he had private matters to discuss with Sung. John obediently bowed and left immediately. After taking a seat, Gok decided to speak directly and questioned why Yun had been chosen. He pointed out that Sung already had sons of his own and that the main family possessed many talented martial artists. Sung explained that the 4 great clans were determined to humiliate their main branch during the tournament. Gok asked if they had truly sent their strongest young experts. Sung confirmed it, and explained that they were not ordinary fighters. The Namgung clan alone had sent the youngest son of the Sword God, whose abilities were rumored to have already surpassed even his father's prime years. It was not just the Namgung clan either. The Tang clan, the Hebeipan clan, and the Shandongyu clan had all dispatched their greatest young geniuses. Gok laughed, commenting that their betrayal during the previous alliance leader election must have wounded the clans more deeply than expected. Sung agreed with that assumption and admitted that among the younger generation, only Yun stood a chance against those monsters. Since Gok himself had trained Yun personally, nobody understood his talent better. Gok sighed and muttered that the slippery little brat had cornered him perfectly by using the one excuse he could not reject. Eventually, he agreed to handle the matter personally and make sure Yun entered the tournament. Sung thanked him sincerely. However, Gok then revealed that he had a request of his own. Despite registration already being closed, he asked whether one more name could still be added. Sung answered that exceptions could always be made and that such matters were flexible. Gok handed him a letter and told him to add another participant, confidently betting his own life on that person's abilities. Curious, Sung asked who the individual was. Without answering directly, Gok began walking toward the exit while saying that there was no need to investigate the person's past. He only stated that the young man would become an important asset to the clan and a positive influence on Yun. After Gok left, Sung opened the letter and looked at the name written inside. The name was Yeo Rang. Confused, Sung muttered that he had never heard the name before. In reality, it was simply the identity Jian had chosen for his disguise. The following morning, the scene shifted to the residence where Jian and Xiao Wu were staying. Standing in front of a mirror, Jian carefully altered his appearance, disguising himself as Yeo Rang in preparation for the tournament. Watching him, Xiao Wu casually asked if the boss was ready to go. Jian turned toward Xiao Wu after completing his disguise. The moment Xiao Wu saw his face, he recognized it as the same disguise Jian had used during the raid on the Golden Tiger stronghold. Jian asked whether anyone would still recognize him with this appearance. Xiao Wu admitted that he was not entirely sure. Someone with a sharp eye might still notice a resemblance. If Jian was that worried, he suggested changing the disguise completely instead of using the same one again. Jian explained that he was not fully accustomed to changing his appearance yet, and his bone-shifting technique was far from high level. Xiao Wu dismissed the concern and pointed out that nobody would ever suspect that famous tournament champions and ordinary butchers like them were the same people. He told Jian to stop worrying and fight seriously. Once he finished butchering the meat, he planned to come watch and cheer him on. Jian questioned what Xiao Wu meant by going all out. Xiao Wu chuckled and explained that most opponents would probably collapse from a single tap, so he actually needed to be more careful about holding back. Jian simply acknowledged his words. Some time later, Jian arrived at the tournament arena. As he looked around, he silently admired the place. The entire ground had been paved with smooth stone slabs, making it neither slippery nor straining on the eyes. The Haha clan must have spent a fortune constructing such an arena. Jian imagined that if Xiao Wu saw it, he would call it a wasteful display of money, though Jian personally thought the arena looked impressive. While he was observing the surroundings, a referee approached and asked whether he was there to compete before demanding his name. Jian calmly introduced himself as Yeo Rang. The referee checked the participant list and quickly found the name. He informed Jian that he was scheduled for the very first match. The preliminary bout would begin immediately after the opening remarks, and his opponent had not yet arrived. If the opponent failed to appear soon, they would automatically forfeit. While waiting, Jian silently observed the crowd and concluded that very few participants truly stood out. The real experts were likely gathered elsewhere. He had heard that the young geniuses of the 5 great clans were also participating, which only made the tournament seem more entertaining. His attention then shifted toward the elders of the 5 clans seated separately in the audience. At the center sat Gok, who happily waved at Jian the moment he noticed him. Jian returned the gesture with a faint smile. Seeing Gok reminded Jian of their earlier conversation when he had requested help entering the tournament despite the registration already being closed. At that time, Gok had explained that he had personally begged the organizers to allow Jian to participate. Jian had sincerely thanked him for the favor. Afterward, Gok had asked Jian for a favor in return. Jian had immediately told him to simply ask. Gok explained that it was nothing major. Several clans were apparently planning to disrupt the festival, so he wanted Jian to teach them a lesson. At the same time, it would be a good opportunity to show Yun that there was always someone stronger in the world. Returning to the present, Jian silently resolved to win the tournament no matter what. Everything would unfold exactly as Gok desired. At that moment, the referee loudly announced the beginning of the first preliminary match and called for Yeo Rang and No Su to enter the arena immediately. Jian calmly walked toward the stage while thinking that it was finally his turn. A short while later, the 2 competitors stood facing each other in the center of the arena. Jian introduced himself as Yeo Rang. His opponent proudly declared himself No Su of the Xian clan. After spinning his spear confidently through the air, he arrogantly offered Jian the first 3 moves. Hearing such confidence, an elder wearing brown clothing laughed and called No Su an arrogant fool. The elder in blue remarked that No Su's abilities did not appear impressive enough to justify such boldness. Another elder dressed in black calmly pointed out that regardless of his attitude, No Su still belonged to the Xian clan, a family renowned for spear techniques. If he had truly mastered those arts, he would not be an easy opponent. The elder in dark green then turned toward Gok and asked for his thoughts. While casually sipping his liquor, Gok stated that No Su had completely lost his mind. The surrounding elders were shocked by such a harsh assessment, and questioned his words. Gok explained that No Su did not even understand how strong his opponent truly was, yet still dared to act so arrogantly. Meanwhile, Jian slowly unsheathed his sword and entered a fighting stance. Calmly, he stated that in that case, he would not hold back either. Seeing the stance, No Su laughed mockingly and questioned whether Jian seriously intended to defeat him with such a basic move as the fairy finger. Without responding, Jian stepped forward and thrust his sword using the fairy finger technique. Watching this, No Su internally ridiculed him for using what he considered a street thug's move. Convinced of his superiority, he rushed forward and thrust his spear toward Jian. However, the moment their weapons met, No Su's expression changed completely. Jian effortlessly redirected the spear, and before No Su realized it, the tip of Jian's sword was already resting against his neck. Gritting his teeth in frustration, No Su realized he could not create distance between them. He immediately stepped backward to escape Jian's range, yet no matter how far he retreated, Jian's sword remained only inches from his throat. Panic slowly spread across his face as he continued retreating again and again, only for the blade to follow perfectly every single time. Eventually, while stumbling backward in desperation, No Su lost his footing and fell directly out of the arena. The crowd stared in stunned silence before breaking into shocked murmurs, questioning what kind of technique they had just witnessed. Without another word, Jian calmly sheathed his sword. The elder in brown stared in disbelief and questioned how everything had ended from nothing more than the fairy finger. The elder in blue observed that Jian's sword form was flawless. Even while chasing his opponent, the tip of his sword had never wavered even slightly. The elder in black added that people capable of handling a blade at such a level were exceptionally rare. The participating martial artists were equally shocked by the overwhelming display. Meanwhile, Gok silently thought that anyone with functioning eyes should now understand the difference in skill. Whatever schemes the other clans were plotting would never succeed. The audience quickly erupted into laughter and cheers. Many mocked Nozu for boasting about giving away 3 free moves, while others demanded that the organizers stop sending weak third-rate fighters and finally bring out the real experts. Later that day, Jian returned to the residence provided by the Haha clan. The moment Chiou-Wu saw him, he asked in disbelief whether the match had already ended. While restoring his face back to its original appearance, Jian calmly confirmed that it was over. Chiou-Wu then asked who the next opponent would be. Jian explained that the second preliminary round would begin the following day, and that there would probably be no more matches today. Chiou-Wu cursed in disappointment, complaining that he had rushed all the way there for nothing. Jian replied that it was actually a good thing the match had ended quickly. Chiou-Wu chuckled and admitted that he had really wanted to witness Jian's skills properly. Jian simply suggested that he could watch tomorrow instead before inviting him out for drinks. Chiou-Wu happily agreed, though he insisted that Jian would be paying. Some time later, while pouring drinks for Jian, Chiou-Wu suddenly asked why he had chosen the name Yeo Rang for the tournament. He then reminded Jian that Yeo Rang had once been the name of the wolf they raised together within the demonic cult, and wondered whether Jian missed it. Jian quietly admitted that seeing the gatekeeper earlier had reminded him of the children from back then. Chiou-Wu agreed and confessed that he missed them too, mentioning names such as the Lightning Sword, So Surin, John, and Little Yeo Rang. He wondered what had become of all of them. The scene then shifted to a forest, where several members of the demonic cult were pursuing No John through the trees. They ordered him to stop immediately, declaring that this was a direct command from the cult leader himself. While running, No John cursed the relentless pursuit squad and complained about their persistence. He understood perfectly why they refused to give up. It was because he possessed the sacred relic. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, he decided he needed to report everything to the squad leader as quickly as possible. At that moment, the pursuers finally spotted him and immediately shouted for his death. No John cursed them once more. Without hesitation, the pursuers hurled several daggers toward him. However, to their complete shock, No John vanished from sight in an instant. The daggers instead slammed harmlessly into nearby tree trunks. The pursuers frantically looked around in confusion, asking where he had disappeared to. Suddenly, No John's voice rang out from above them. Declaring that he was right there, he leapt down from the trees and unleashed several sword slashes in one swift motion, killing all of them instantly. Standing among the fallen bodies, No John coldly declared that it did not matter how many enemies they sent after him because it was all useless. After all, he was the lightning sword of the demonic cult. The next day, the scene shifted back to the tournament arena, where Jian defeated yet another opponent with overwhelming ease. The referee loudly announced that the winner was Yeo Rang, declaring that he had defeated his opponent in a single strike and advanced to the finals. Among the spectators, the Tang clan genius Chiou-Yong watched the fight in complete disbelief. Even the Namgung prodigy, who was rumored to have surpassed the legendary sword Lord Namgung at the same age, had been defeated in a single strike. Those events reminded Chiou-Yong of the warning given to him earlier by a Tang clan elder. The elder had emphasized that this opponent was far from ordinary, and instructed him to fight seriously from the very beginning. The tournament itself was meant to intimidate the branch families coveting the clan's wealth, and victory was absolutely necessary. Remembering those words, Chiou-Yong realized he could no longer hold anything back and decided he would have to use his trump card. Some time later, Jian and Chiou-Yong stood face to face in the arena for the tournament finals. The moment the match began, Chiou-Yong immediately unleashed several daggers toward Jian while internally resolving to pour all of his strength into the fight from the start. As the daggers entered range, Jian calmly entered a stance and swung his sword. Watching this, the Tang clan elder scoffed in ridicule. After the water-carving slash came the heaven-sweeping strike, yet Jian dared to challenge a clan martial art with such a basic sword technique. To the elder, it seemed utterly laughable. However, both the elder and Chiou-Yong were shocked when Jian effortlessly deflected every single dagger. Chiou-Yong could hardly believe that all of his attacks had been neutralized in a single clash. Without wasting time, Jian immediately rushed forward to continue the assault. At first, Chiou-Yong managed to dodge Jian's sword thrusts without much difficulty. But as Jian continued attacking, the pressure steadily increased. Each strike became faster and sharper, making it harder and harder for Chil-yung to evade. Realizing the situation was becoming dangerous, Chil-yung quickly leapt backward while gritting his teeth in frustration. He could not accept the idea of someone like himself losing to something as simple as the water-carving slash. Left with no other option, he slowly slipped his left hand inside his clothing. Seeing the struggle unfold, the Tang elder angrily criticized him for showing such a pathetic and flustered expression before a mere opponent despite being the heir of the clan. Then, to the elder's horror, he saw Chil-yung pull out a hidden weapon. Without hesitation, Chil-yung launched the hidden weapon toward Jian. The attack exploded upon impact, causing dust and debris to erupt across the arena and obscuring the spectators' vision entirely. When the dust finally settled, Chil-yung stared ahead in complete shock. Jian had blocked the hidden weapon as well, using nothing more than a simple cloth. Jian coldly condemned him for daring to use a killing technique during a martial arts tournament. Chil-yung stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Jian then declared that the victor's position belonged to him before flicking the cloth sharply, sending the hidden needles flying back toward Chil-yung. Startled, Chil-yung desperately jumped backward and fell to the ground to avoid them. Still shaken, he muttered in disbelief that Jian had completely deflected the lightning tempest. Before he could recover, Jian grabbed him by the collar and questioned whether he had prepared himself for the consequences. Immediately afterward, Jian kicked out his legs. Enraged and humiliated, Chil-yung retaliated with a punch aimed directly at Jian's face. However, Jian calmly caught his arm mid-strike and began squeezing it with terrifying force. Chil-yung screamed in agony. At that moment, Gok abruptly rose to his feet and ordered them to stop, declaring that enough was enough. Ignoring the chaos around him, Jian dragged Chil-yung toward the Tang clan's VIP seating area and calmly asked whether that was indeed the Tang clan's section. Without waiting for an answer, he hurled Chil-yung directly toward them. The Tang elder immediately caught Chil-yung and anxiously checked on him, only to realize that he had already lost consciousness. Gritting his teeth in frustration, the elder muttered about Jian's audacity. Throughout it all, Jian simply stood silently in the arena. The elder ordered his subordinates to take Chil-yung to the treatment room. While watching them carry the unconscious young man away, he forced himself to calm down and concluded that retreating for now was the wisest option. At that moment, Gok approached him and casually remarked that the weapon in his possession looked rather familiar. If he remembered correctly, it was one of the Tang clan's 10 supreme hidden weapons. The Tang elder immediately apologized and explained that members of the Tang clan were required to carry such weapons with them at all times. Gok acknowledged how valuable those weapons were to the Tang clan, but pointed out that the excuse of carrying them at all times sounded weak. If Jian had been anyone else, the situation could have ended far worse. The elder dressed in black agreed, stating that they were fortunate matters had ended with only this much damage. The elder in dark green added that the incident could have easily led to grave consequences and believed the Tang clan owed everyone a proper explanation. The Tang elder bowed deeply and apologized once more, explaining that Chil-yung was still young and overly obsessed with victory, causing him to lose control. Gok coldly remarked that the apology should be directed toward Jian instead. The Tang elder immediately bowed respectfully toward Jian and introduced himself as Tang Heijio, elder of the Tang clan. He apologized sincerely on behalf of the clan, admitting that his subordinate had panicked at the thought of defeat and committed a serious breach of etiquette. Jian accepted the apology calmly, and simply warned them to be more careful in the future. Tang Heijio expressed his gratitude for Jian's magnanimity. With a deeply flustered expression, the elder turned away while inwardly cursing the humiliation that had fallen upon the Tang clan. Shortly afterward, Gok loudly announced that the tournament had finally reached its conclusion and declared Yahello Rang the champion of the martial arts tournament. The audience erupted into cheers, shouting Jian's tournament name repeatedly. Standing proudly in the arena, Jian raised his sword while thinking that he had finally found a way to cure his little sister. Now he only needed to hurry home and give her the medicine immediately. Sometime later, Jian and Chil-Wu returned home together. The moment Haiyan saw the herb Jian carried, he immediately asked where it had come from. Jian casually replied that he had simply managed to obtain it somehow. Guangho found the answer unbelievable. According to the physician, the 1,000-year fire spirit grass was so precious that no amount of money could buy it, yet Jian was casually claiming he had merely stumbled upon it. Jian explained that luck had simply been on his side. Apparently, the elder of the Ha clan shared a deep relationship with grandfather Muang, and the elder had gifted the herb to him personally. Guangho pointed out that such a priceless treasure was not something anyone could casually hand out as a gift. Before the conversation could continue, Chiol Wu loudly interrupted and complained about being interrogated so much. He exaggerated that he had worked himself to the bones slaughtering cattle and pigs, which caused the elder to take a liking to him and hand over the herb. Besides, the herb had supposedly been intended for grandfather Muang from the start. Guangho replied that the method of obtaining it no longer mattered. What mattered was that they finally possessed the medicine capable of curing their little sister. He sincerely thanked them for all their hard work, especially after they earned so much money and acquired such an extraordinary herb. However, he then asked how exactly the herb was supposed to be consumed. Chiol Wu casually suggested that she could probably just chew and swallow it. Jian admitted that he was not entirely sure. Considering how precious the herb was, it would probably be safer to consult the physician first before using it. Gina then nervously revealed that the physician was no longer there. Surprised, Jian immediately asked what she meant. Gina explained that the previous day, the physician had departed for Suzhou to treat a retired official, and would likely not return for at least half a month. Jian questioned how she knew so much about the physician's schedule. Haiyan explained that their little sister had recently become very interested in medicine, to the point that even the physician had considered accepting her as a disciple. Hearing that, Jian smiled warmly and encouraged her to pursue anything she wished to learn without hesitation. He promised to support her fully before returning to the issue at hand and asking what they should do now. While thinking carefully, Jian noticed that the herb's color already appeared slightly duller than before. It was slowly beginning to wither. Once a miraculous herb was uprooted, preserving its medicinal properties became a race against time. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Jian concluded that they could not afford to wait another half-month. Before the herb lost its effectiveness entirely, they needed to hurry and decoct it into medicine immediately. Genius protagonists, overwhelming growth, and legendary battles, this is your battlefield. We're just steps away from 20,000 subscribers. Subscribe now and rise with us.